course, we all know just how bad Elon Musk's Twitter X bullshit is going, and you just start to see all these bizarre accounts popping up all over the place. And one of my favorite ones that I've seen so far is this one, and it's like Antifa Watch. And in the description, it has this really, really funny bit where it basically says, they call themselves anti-fascists. We call them Antifa.
Huh?
like you know, an anti-fascist has never like abbreviated, done that portmanteau before. It's never happened before. It doesn't exist. I am in my Antifa outfit on the stream today. For those of you who can see, if you can't see, I've literally just got a balaclava on. That's all it is. Yeah. So welcome to Red Planet. How are you doing? What's going on?
Oh, you're talking to the audience. You're not talking.
I could ask you if you want to answer. It's up to you.
I was feeling like, oh, he wants to know how things are for me. That's really nice.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you anyways. They're okay. Things are okay. How are you? Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like Antifa Mule too much. It's kind of rude.
It's true. That's what that account is for, actually, is to keep me accountable.
Yeah, I actually am bored with this account. I think we should do more Antifa watching.
We're at Red Planet. Welcome to the show. I'm gonna say, are you
gonna wear it the whole day?
No, because it obscures the sound of my voice actually on the mic. Yes, welcome in. It's that time of the day, the week, the month. It's Sunday, and we're doing Red Planet. It's me and Kira. We got daylight savings wrong, so Tim is still asleep. Big up, sleepy Tim. We love you, Conrad. It's not his fault. It's all our fault. He just lives in a different part of the world, and we're all idiots.
I mean, that is his fault. He does live in a different part of the world. You know, he could not stop doing that.
He could stop living.
Let's hold Tim accountable for his choices.
That's entirely his choice, isn't it? It was just his choice to be born there. When you're born, you get to like, there's like a drop down menu. It's like when you start a game, it's like place
it's like
of
Fortnite.
birth.
You get everyone's on a bus through the sky, and then you thank the bus driver, and then you dive in your location you want to dive in. And Tim, you know, if you're watching right now, which you're not because you're asleep in the Southern Hemisphere, you know, you could have chosen better.
Yeah, he really could have.
Think of the group. Stop thinking of yourself.
I know, exactly. What kind of a communist is he? That's the real question. Good point.
So, but for the record, Tim, it is possible that Tim could be joining us later in the show. So stay tuned. All you Tim heads out there, don't go running away. Tim may awaken and grace us with his presence. So that's possible.
Stay very tuned.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way to absorb this show. Yes. But Kira, tell me, what is the most base thing you've done this week?
Ooh, honestly, just I'm still just like trying to socialize with humans outside of my bubble and just trying to push my agenda everywhere. And already like one of the people that I'm seeing is already like, I'm going to go vegan for this next month. I was like, hell yeah. Because yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited for that. So I've been trying to help him out with some stuff, but yeah, just pushing my agenda down people's throats via dangling the possibility of romantic and sexual relations with me is the means to which I'm doing my propaganda. So yeah, that's my most-based thing that I've been doing. What about you, Mule?
That is pretty based. Have I ever told you that one of the reasons that I ended up getting super radicalized away from like a sort of, I want to say, I don't know, maybe like a couple more Jordan Peterson tweets before going down like the really bad toxic masculine pipeline, and I'd said some really like absurd things on Twitter, like, I'm not sure about this new brand of feminism, I'm an egalitarian.
And now look at you, you're a raging misogynist.
Yeah, it's true actually. That
always one-upping me with how cool you are every single week. It's unbelievable.
It's true, which is why I'm telling you this embarrassing story. This is a mule's mistakes moment. So you know, so I was posting like really cringe stuff like that, and this girl that I was seeing that was super hot literally said to me like, "Yeah, I can't really hang out with you anymore because you're tweeting this weird misogynist stuff." And I was like, "No, no, it's a mistake. Oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, fuck." And then like, yeah, she never spoke to me again. And then now I'm a communist. So there you go. So it does work actually. Obviously, it wasn't as simple as that, but no, that was definitely like a big motivating factor for me to like stop being a fucking weirdo about that kind of shit.
Remember when we had Benny on the show a couple weeks ago?
No.
Yes, you do. You remember. You remember we had Benny on the show, and we were all talking about the power of like the power of like when somebody is bigoted or whatever, instead of, or let me put it this way. If you're trying to discuss your values, right? That you don't approach the conversation with like, okay, so this is going to be a lot for you. And also, I don't want to like when you try to mince words and tiptoe, and it's clear that you're presenting your position as something that needs to be like handled with care because of how radical and I'm not doing a really good job of explaining it.
I
But
know exactly what you mean. If you do it in a exaggerated manner.
yeah, like, well, the power of just treating your perspective as the perspective to have and just approaching it like that, there is such a power to that social pressure, right? And whether it's like a hot girl or your group of friends, and this works both ways, right? As we've seen, like there's a lot of harm that can be done by this social pressure to have to, take certain positions on all sorts of things. But it's not oftentimes like a dare. You're not familiar with dare. It's a program in the United States that's
I'm
like,
familiar with Dare. I know about
I don't know.
American
Okay,
stuff.
to all of you, okay, well, because we are number one.
Shaq was wearing a t-shirt of it or something.
Let me
DARE.
shut up. Let me finish the story because I'm getting confused. Okay, so it's not always like a dare scenario where it's like, hey, it'd be real cool if you hated trans people. All of us hate trans people. Like it's very rarely that explicit, but sometimes it's a little bit more explicit, and sometimes it's just the general environment just feels it's this fuzzy, indistinct, nondescript pressure that you just feel. Um, and so I think that's a really powerful thing to both understand as like a harm that can be committed, but also understand as a power that we can wield on the left. And so I think that girl that you're talking about was in a way wielding that power where she's just like, she's not going to be like, okay, I see your position and like, I totally get it, blah, 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 blah. She's like, no, I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to deal with that. And it had the correct effect, which is good to hear.
The upsetting thing about this woman, though, is that she actually started speaking to me a couple of years ago again, because this was years and years ago. This was like maybe, I don't know, 2016, 17 or something. And then a couple of years ago, she started speaking to me again. And she was, I can't remember what it was. She was definitely flirting with me, and she could see that I've changed, obviously. But I was tweeting about Cuba or something.
She call you tanky.
She was getting stressed about these posts, and she was like, I don't quite understand what's going on, because Cuba is just like this, that, and the other. And she started saying stuff about vaccines, and then I laughed at her. So I did the thing. I was like, no, your social views are stupid. Like, what are you talking about? Like, none of this is funny or makes sense. Well, it is funny, and it doesn't make sense. And she got really upset, and she just had to. She goes, I can't talk to you anymore. I can't talk to you anymore. This is really cruel. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're flipping the script now. Like I was too right wing for you back then, and now you're too right wing for me. Okay, cool. So yeah, outflanked her in the end. That's right.
It's like a classic high school rom-com where like
It's
girl doesn't like how misogynistic boy is. Time goes by, boy meets back up with girl, and now girl is too shitty for boy. So boy rejects girl and then goes on communist show to talk about it.
it's happening. It's literally.
And then she takes her glasses off, and you're like, "Oh my god, she's hot."
And we're both 35. Yeah, so but that isn't the most base thing I did this week. That was just me encouraging you to do more of your base stuff because it works. I'm living proof. And what's the most base thing I did this week? Nothing much really. Honestly, I've just done nothing again this week. Been looking after myself. Had the Greater Manchester Tenants Union committee meeting on Tuesday, but I honestly didn't contribute much. But so what are the audience going to get out of this little section from me? Well, you can have this little anecdote about bread. Because I've been making my own bread. I think I've mentioned this on the show before when I started doing it, but I really get off on making my own bread. I think it's really good. I think selling bread at the shop that the shops do, it's not real bread, it's crap. It doesn't even taste of anything. I've been eating bread from the shops this week because I forgot to make some bread this week, and it's bad. It's just the worst bread ever. I don't know why people accept it, but I made some bread this week, and I think I got something slightly wrong. I've been told that the alchemy surrounding bread making is very particular, but I haven't had an issue for like over, a year. For those that can't see, for those that are listening, Kira's already laughing at this, so this is how you know it's a good anecdote. But basically,
The alchemy of bread.
the alchemy of bread is very particular. It's very specific, and so I've obviously been making perfect bread for about 2 years, is what people are telling me. Because all I did, I think, this time is have a bit too much water, right? And I don't know if anyone's experienced this feeling, but like when you have too much carbohydrates, right, in a meal, and you're not used to having that much carbohydrates, you have like a massive insulin spike, and it makes you want to nap, like super hard. Like you feel it after lunch, and it's like, oh, and you feel gross, and it's kind of like a bit of it kind of feels like you're getting a bit high, actually. And so I made this bread this week, and it was really bad, and I didn't realize until I made a sandwich before the committee meeting, and I ate this sandwich, and during the entire meeting, I felt like I was going to die. So I just simply couldn't contribute anything. So I tried to be based this week. I really did. I really, really, really did, but it didn't work. But in other news, it's Trans Day of Visibility, the day that we're recording this show. You'll be listening to it. It won't be Trans Day of Visibility anymore, and that's fine. But it is today as we're recording this. So happy Trans Day of Visibility, everyone. And also, it's Easter, isn't it? And the only thing that I'm getting out of these 2 days converging is that Jesus was trans. That's the only thing that I'm like getting out of this. So if any conservatives are upset for whatever reason today, I can't imagine why. That's my opinion. So there you go.
I mean, he did like turn water into wine and shit. Like,
yeah,
trans is like nothing compared to that.
He could easily
Why is that
trans
such
agenda.
like a mind bender that he couldn't be trans?
Yep, it's true. Yep. This is it. This is what we're saying. This is the official Red Planet position.
I mean, has anyone ever seen Jesus Christ's birth certificate? like have any of the like right wingers done the deep, like, have they done all the transvestigation on Jesus?
Do your
I'm just saying
research.
It's extremely possible that Jesus was trans, and I think you have a very good I think there's a lot of questions that I'm asking right now that these 2 days are converging. Like, I'm asking questions, and I'm not afraid to ask those questions. I'm brave enough.
Are you just asking questions?
I'm just asking questions. That's it. I just think that those questions need to be asked. Like, was Jesus trans?
Yeah. The answer is yes. But we want to know if you've done any based stuff. So if you've been doing based stuff, please message us either on Instagram or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. And imagine this segment where, I've been bumbling around trying to tell anecdotes about bread, and Kira's telling us about how she's withholding romantic relationships with people in order to radicalize them.
Not what I said at all.
We could pepper in some actual base stuff that you've been doing. So just imagine that. That would be good, wouldn't it? But
do you want to tell people how to do that, though?
I thought I did. But anyway, what you could do is you could send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. I definitely said that twice. It doesn't matter.
All right. I probably blocked you out.
It's good.
That happens sometimes with friends. Friends sometimes block friends out. Your brain just revolts against your friend.
We're literally only 20 minutes into the show,
Yeah.
and she's already blocking out my voice. This is good news. This is good news, folks. But speaking of good news, we do actually have some interesting news to start off this week's news segment with. This is about the Boeing workers, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAM, are organizing negotiations with Boeing for later this year. Yes, that's right, Boeing. The company that's had multiple extremely dangerous technical failures over the last year, including a door plug falling out of a 2-month-old plane, extremely dangerous, and 346 people losing their lives in crashes in Ethiopia and Indonesia in 2018 and 2019. This happened because faulty sensors triggered an automated system in the 737 MAX that had not been disclosed to pilots. And so Boeing workers are demanding a new contract, which would protect over 30,000 jobs. It's very interesting this because there's really a lot of leverage to be gained here with negotiating with this company as a union, because they need to be saved from themselves, and that is exactly what Brandon Bryant, the direct and business representative at the Machinists Lodge, WT4 in Gladstone, Oregon, said, we need to bargain and save them from themselves. So Bryant is taking part in the national negotiations with Boeing that began on March the 8th this year. Boeing's not really doing well. We think there's a solid future ahead of us, but they have to partner with the IAM. We have to be the valuable stakeholders in this company to get them back to being successful. It's arguable that the company has, made all these mistakes in manufacturing these planes because of terrible worker conditions, rushed contracts, being forced out of factories and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's a really important demonstration of why worker power can actually result in safety for consumers as well, right? Because if you're a worker, generally speaking, you have a lot more in common with the average person who might be able to use a plane or whatever. And so you completely understand like the necessity of producing good stuff for the people who use your stuff, especially when it's something as dangerous as flying. So I think this could be the case for multiple different companies all over the world. Like, say, for example, I don't know, a pasta production company realizes that they're putting out pasta and it's actually got like a bunch of harmful additives in it, and the reason for that is because the executives are cutting corners. They want to cut costs. They want to maximize that shareholder revenue. They want to maximize profits, have a healthy bottom line is what they call it. And the workers are just like, you know what, no, this sucks. Like, everyone's eating our pasta and they're feeling ill and it's not great. Let's organize, and then we can negotiate and actually like remove this stuff, because we all know how much the bosses are actually making, in the same way that people at the IAM know exactly how much the bosses at Boeing are making. So with so much going wrong at Boeing, we're confident that this contract will get negotiated with proper protections for workers and customers alike. Do you think I missed anything out on Kira?
I also just want to mention that Boeing is one of the biggest providers of munitions to Israel to flatten Gaza, has been responsible for so much and continues to be responsible for so much of the genocide that is occurring, that Israel is committing against Palestinians. So until this company is like abolished completely, which sometimes is quite a that's one tactic to go after, to try boycotting these companies, to try to make it illegal sometimes for these companies to operate, and other means to which you can try, like the way that Palestine Action tries to attack Elbit. You can also forgive me for saying, but from the inside with the workers, seize power, and that way workers have control over that company and can say, no, we're not going to actually manufacture 1,000 bombs to send over to Israel.
Exactly.
That's just me hoping and praying that people would make those decisions, but I don't think you'll ever make any progress in that direction if you continue to maintain a top heavy ownership of the company with no worker voice, right? Especially when you see how much
Absolutely.
workers are for Palestine.
Yeah, spot on. Spot on. So next up, tell us about in-home healthcare workers in New York.
Sure. That's in America, by the way. That's where I'm from. I live there in America,
What?
not New York, though, because it's a very large country. So I've actually never been to New York City or New York, period, which I really should go. Anyways, in-home healthcare workers in New York City are performing a hunger strike, and they fight to end their 24-hour shifts. So 20 home health aides ended a 5-day hunger strike in front of the City Hall building in New York City this week. Organized by Ain't I a Woman campaign, the action was taken to draw attention to a bill in the city council, which would ban 24-hour shifts for home health aides, splitting them into two 12-hour shifts. Under current law, these workers are only paid up to 13 hours in a 24-hour shift, mandating an unpaid 8-hour period and 3 hours for meals. However, owing to the demands of home health care, workers often do not receive any break whatsoever during these 24-hour shifts. The new bill, introduced in early March, faces some resistance from the current Speaker of the City Council, Adrian Adams, who's expressed doubt over its legality and deems the issue a matter for the state government to solve. However, attempts to pass similar bans of 24-hour shifts at the state level have been tied up in the legislature for years. Home health aides are overwhelmingly women of color, often immigrants, who have been preyed upon by insurance companies and the healthcare industry for decades, forced to work long hours, doing difficult manual labor, and that they are largely performing this labor in the care of another marginalized group, our elderly, has made it all the easier to ignore their suffering. Organizers have said more actions are planned in support of the bill in the future. So, Mule, would you like
Yes.
would you like to tell me what the UN is doing about reparations? What's going on with that?
Well, whether they're doing anything is questionable for sure, because the UN is pretty bad at doing stuff, but they're talking about it at least, which is very good. The UN, Antonio Guterres, this is Antonio Guterres again, who has said multiple times that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and calling for a ceasefire. He's pretty based. He's been over to Rafah and actually been on the ground and seen stuff, which is more than can be said for a lot more other nations that have a bit more control over the UN. But this is quite an interesting thing that's been brought up. But in a speech last week marking the UN International Day of the Remembrance of Victims of Slavery, the United Nations Secretary General Guterres called upon its members to build, quote, reparatory justice frameworks to overcome generations of exclusion and discrimination. So, the comments follow a UN report published in September of last year, which also urged so-called former colonial powers to pursue financial reparations for enslavement of people of African descent. A poll published the same day from the Repair Campaign, an organization producing reparation plans for the Caribbean Community and Economic Union, showed that 40% of people in the United Kingdom agree that the Caribbean should be compensated, while 60% felt they should at least get a formal apology. And as someone in the UK, I do just want to say, yes, the UK is that racist. 40% of people probably, understand exactly what's happened with colonialism. The other 60% are just like, country back. They just don't know. All they know is migrants are stealing our jobs. But I think that this is like a very interesting. It's an interesting, motion to kind of ask for, because this is something that has been just, I guess, pontificated upon for so long, reparations, for the transatlantic slave trade, that it's like, things really need to be speeding up in terms of, how countries that are basically, places where there are majority descendants of slaves, are suffering so much under imperialist capitalism. Cuba is one, Jamaica, like loads of Caribbean countries. And of course it would mean that would be a huge economic boost to those countries. Yeah, and this is just it's just something that imperialist capital doesn't want to talk about because they're more interested in vetoing the UN and sending $14 billion every month to Israel so they can just do genocide. That money could be so much better spent in actually, doing proper reparations. It's just completely. It's toothless, right? It's toothless. Like the UN, the more and more stuff that I see from the UN, the more and more I'm just like, as long as the US is in there, there's just no point in doing anything. Like, they got that veto power. It's complete fuckery. I think the only thing that we can talk about that is interesting is how the US decided to abstain in the ceasefire vote earlier this week. But I think you're probably gonna talk to us about that in the no, she's not. She's shaking her head. She's not going to be talking about that in the Palestine update.
I'm covering that up. Actually, I'm part of the cover up. I did not include
You're part
it.
of the cover up.
Uh-huh.
You're part of the
I did not
cover-up.
include it in my Palestine report, which means, if you think about it, I am part of the cover up of what the United States did.
That's fair
I
enough.
hate to tell my fans, but if you crunch the numbers, that's just the reality of it.
Would you say you're a Joe Biden enthusiast?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Correct. I'm trying to think of something clever to say. But
we're being sarcastic again, just in case anyone doesn't know.
It's a Mule and Kira day, probably, if Tim doesn't show up later. So this whole day is I feel so bad for people that can't really I have a hard time grasping sarcasm because we are very sarcastic and we also just keep doing it.
And we're also Kira's better at it. But I'm also terrible at sarcasm. I'm terrible at broadcasting that I'm doing sarcasm. Some people might think that I'm doing sarcasm now by saying this, but that's not the case. This is genuine. Unless I say I'm being sarcastic, I am being genuine. So, anyway, yes, no, that wasn't confusing at all, was it? Kira, listen, forget all this. Let's do this update. Tell us about what's going down.
Sure, in Palestine. So, just like every week when I do my Palestine report, this is not even remotely, as we just touched upon, a comprehensive analysis of what's been going on for the past week in Palestine, and not just in Palestine, but just generally speaking about Palestine. I'm just going to touch on some things that I thought were interesting. Also, not to, I don't know, there's endless things to discuss, so I really recommend you check out some reputable news sources on this. Al Jazeera is a great resource. They're not perfect, but they're far better than most in terms of how comprehensive they are, and also accuracy. So anyways, as of yesterday, the official death toll in Gaza has exceeded 32,600 people, mostly women and children. So the first story that I would like to talk about is how a State Department official has resigned over U.S. Gaza policy. So in an interview with Democracy Now!, State Department official Anel Shalin publicly spoke about her resignation. Amy Goodman qualified her resignation as, quote, the most significant protest resignation over U.S. support for Israel's assault on Gaza since the resignation in October of Josh Paul, the senior State Department official involved in arms transfers to foreign governments, if any of you recall that. Shalin describes being moved by the words of Aaron Bushnell, the active duty U.S. airman who self-immolated outside the Israeli embassy in protest of the war on Gaza, who implored everyone to take a stand against genocide. Shalin said, quote, I have a young daughter, and I thought about it. In the future, if she were to ask me, what were you doing when this was happening? You were at the State Department. I want to be able to tell her that I didn't stay silent, end quote. When asked about internal dissent in the State Department, Anel relayed that many officials and staffers there are horrified what the U.S. government is making them participate in, and many are eager to resign, but wary of doing so. She said, quote, I decided to go public because when I started to tell colleagues that I was planning to resign over Gaza, so many people's response was, please speak out, please speak for us. Many people are not in a position where they feel they could resign, or they are trying to do what they can on the inside. Yes, many people are extremely horrified by the US government's position on this horrific conflict and the actions of both the Israeli and the US governments. I think at the end of the day, many people inside state, as in State Department, know that this is a horrific policy and can't believe that the United States government is engaged in such actions that contravene American values so directly. But the leadership's not listening, end quote. So to me, this reads as proof that even our war-hungry American imperialists who are fully drinking the Kool-Aid of so-called America spreading its democracy and freedom everywhere and all that bullshit, even they are deeply disagreeing with what the Biden administration's actions are in Gaza. Upon being asked about the uncommitted movement, a movement that we here on Red Planet have covered, where people are protesting the Biden administration's complicity in genocide by voting uncommitted on their primary ballot, as well as the nationwide protests, Anil said, quote, "So within the State Department, civil servants are very committed to their role of being non-political, of following the instruction that they receive, just following orders. This is not the first time that people have been involved or had to carry out policies that they perhaps did not agree with. And it is something that many of these people have signed up for. This is the role of carrying out America's foreign policy. On this issue, I think, because it has been so horrific and because we are seeing such growing political pushback from the American public, people are increasingly frustrated. Many other people with whom I spoke said they're considering resigning, end quote. To me, this speaks volumes to the power that being outspoken with one's politics has in creating a society that no longer sees the annihilation of Palestinian people as the norm or something that everyone agrees with, or arguably even worse, not even acknowledged. So I implore you, audience, to keep voicing your opinion, keep protesting, and be that ground zero for the society you want to live in, for the norms you'd like to see our world have, because it's clearly having an effect. And this is something that Mule and I just discussed. This is just what Mule and I were discussing just prior to this about like creating an environment, being an active actor in creating an environment in which, you actually support this bullshit? Like, don't apologize for fucking standing against genocide.
Make them feel
like the freak. Correct. Because they are freaks. Anyways,
you know who isn't a freak? You know who isn't a freak?
Who?
It's our boy. He's coming in.
Who's our boy? Say his name. Damn
He's coming in. He's coming in.
Hey.
Hey.
Whoa. He's in.
Oh
Big
my
Tim.
God. I'm a huge Tim head. Are you Tim?
Turns out I am. Thanks to Conrad for getting me in quickly. We did have some little time zone errors this morning, but it's okay.
Tim, it's not your fault. It's literally everyone else's fault. Don't worry.
I did establish early in the show that it's very much Tim's fault.
No.
While I wasn't here.
He's just a little guy. He's literally just a little guy.
So I'm the only one that didn't change time zones this week, I think, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I had no idea.
Okay.
But yeah, we're just going through the Palestine updates.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And after all that, we can go around and ask you, how your week was and stuff if you like. And then our editor can very smoothly make it seem like, he's been here the whole time and we have our shit together, actually. Okay. Anyways, so that was one story. Next story. In a new order, the ICJ orders Israel to allow unhindered aid into Gaza. So the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, has ordered Israel to ensure unhindered aid can get into Gaza. The legally binding order was issued after a request by South Africa, which brought the genocide case against Israel to the ICJ in January. The court noted in its latest order, quote, Palestinians in Gaza are no longer facing only a risk of famine, but that famine is setting in, end quote. The judges also cite UN data, which finds at least 31 people, including 27 children, having already died of malnutrition and dehydration. And these are like the harms, the deaths, the injuries, the pain that is oftentimes overlooked when it comes to war, genocide, any sort of like horrific conflict. A lot of people will equate mainly bombs and gunshots as being like the main harms. And while they are major harms, many overlook the other harms, which is, famine, lack of clean drinking water, clean water just for washing your wounds or preventing the spread of disease. So this is something that's really important to acknowledge. Israel is required to submit a report to the ICJ in a month, showing how it has implemented the order. So let's see how Israel's doing right now with complying with that order. Oh, look, as Gaza faces famine, Israel is blocking aid from the UNRWA. So last week, we covered how the US and other countries are cutting funds from the UNRWA. If you didn't know, the UNRWA stands for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. So basically, it's a UN branch, it's a UN agency for Palestine. And it provides and supports human development and humanitarian services encompassing education, healthcare, social services, infrastructure improvements, and emergency responses. It is the main means to which Palestinians in Gaza receive humanitarian aid. So last week on Red Planet, we covered how Biden signed a $1.2 trillion appropriations bill that strips funding to the UNRWA until March 2025. The U.S. first suspended aid to the UNRWA in late January, if you recall, when the Israeli government, with no evidence, levied allegations that 12 of the UNRWA's 30,000 employees, 12 of them were supposedly involved in the Al-Aqsa flood attacks on October 7th. This unsubstantiated allegation prompted other top donors to the UNRWA, such as Germany, the EU, and Sweden, to cut funding to the UNRWA, although a number of countries have recently announced their intention to resume funding, which I find to be very interesting. And this is a little bit of like a side note in this story, but I just did want to mention it. There is a surge of support that the UNRWA is receiving despite the US and other countries' decision to cut funding. So the UNRWA spokesperson, Tamara Al-Rifai, said, quote, "The decision by the US Congress and consequently by the US government to stop funding to the UNRWA this year is a huge blow. There is no sugarcoating. The impact on our finances is huge, and also the impact on the politics around the UNRWA. Seeing our largest donor and many times our closest partner withhold funding, which means withhold trust in the UNRWA, is a huge blow to us. However, I also want to say in parallel, several governments, European and non-European, have either much increased their funding to the UNRWA or have given us money for the first time. Also, we are getting overwhelming individual support, donations from $10 to $20,000 to our campaigns and our drives. And that speaks for a sentiment that is also galvanizing around the UNRWA and its role. So the way that I just want to mention, and this is a little bit of a segue in this story, but I did want to point this out because I think, and this has been my hunch with Palestine since I was awoken to the reality of what Palestine and Israel, what that is, that Palestine continues to be this wedge in the foothold of America's hegemony. We're seeing that America is being like, we're going to cut our massive funding to the UNRWA, and other countries fall in line. But now we're seeing many of those countries resume funding. We're seeing other countries start donating for the very first time. And this is one of the multitude of ways that you could argue shaky, but definitely stable reputation that America had as like the world's overseer is starting to fracture pretty substantially. Germany has even resumed funding. Germany. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
I think that's actually really important and pertinent because, we're seeing so many geopolitics sort of covering shows like Breakthrough News, for example, talking about how the empire is in decline. And it just provably is because America loves starting wars. It loves starting genocides. But it just the places where it funds them just aren't winning. They're just provably not winning. You know, again, we consistently hear about all the deaths from Gaza, from, you know, civilian deaths at the hands of Israel, but we don't really hear about Hamas, do we? We don't really hear about like how Israel is doing, like in the actual like soldier versus soldier fights that
They're
are
doing
happening.
horribly, by the way.
They are, yeah. This is the
They're
thing.
failing.
Yeah. So yeah, very important to mention that. I think, Kira, I think you're spot on with that.
Yeah. And also this piggybacks on the story that I mentioned just a bit prior about that State Department official that resigned. I was reading her interview, and she was talking about how America is such a great country and we stand up for all these fucking values and blah, 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 which we know is demonstrably not the case. But even she is resigning from being a U.S. State Department official because of how much the contradictions have been sharpened for her with regards to the way that America is behaving and participating in this genocide of Palestinians. So yeah, the U.S. has bowed out of providing their substantial, huge, very sizable portion of the UNRWA's funding. Now, despite a UN-backed report sounding the alarm on imminent famine in northern Gaza, Israeli authorities announced Sunday that they no longer approve the passage. I believe Sunday means today, perhaps, because this article, I think, came out. Regardless, Israeli authorities announced that they will no longer approve the passage of any UNRWA food convoys into northern Gaza. So Israeli, which is like, they're just plainly saying, we know you cannot eat. No, you cannot drink water. You cannot have medical anything. Israeli spokesman David Menser commented on the decision, saying, quote, UNRWA, he says this evilly, by the way, imagine this, UNRWA are part of the problem, and we will now stop working with them. We are actively phasing out the use of UNRWA because they perpetuate the conflict rather than try and alleviate the conflict, end quote. Just know that these evil fucks see the quote unquote conflict really as Palestinian existing, and Palestinians exist is to them a harm to Israeli life, a harm to their own, whatever, their agenda. So they like to push this, they like to try to convince you that any aid coming into Gaza means the terrorists are going to take it all and eat and be well fed, and that's that's not even remotely true, but it's also just know that ultimately, if you've ever kept up with anything Israel has ever, like even officials like Netanyahu and others have said about Palestinians, they see every Palestinian baby as a terrorist. They see every Palestinian mother as a terrorist. They see every Palestinian home as a shelter of a terrorist. And what do they think a terrorist is? Honestly, they think of it as an Arab that doesn't like them, because any Arab, really, you don't have to even not like them. It's a disgustingly wide, large umbrella that they're casting. So it's very consistent with their attitude that they would prohibit the UNRWA from providing aid in northern Gaza. But this is especially damning for their their reputation, if that still has any sort of chance of anything, because of the UN's, or excuse me, the ICJ's demands that Israel provide aid because of the impending famine that is already affecting so many people. In response to this news that Israel will withhold aid in northern Gaza, UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini wrote in a social media post, and I quote, "This is outrageous and makes it intentional to obstruct life-saving assistance during a man-made famine. These restrictions must be lifted. UNRWA is the largest organization with the highest reach to displaced communities in Gaza, like we said before. By preventing UNRWA to fulfill its mandate in Gaza, the clock will tick faster towards famine, and many more will die of hunger, dehydration, and lack of shelter," end quote. So I don't know if the hosts have anything to say about any of those stories that we just covered.
I think no. I just want to like sort of comment on the UN ceasefire vote. Obviously, it's going to be ultimately toothless. I think, in case anyone didn't see, like, the US essentially abstained from a ceasefire vote that was, I think, it was altered by some member states, but it generally has like some quite decent stuff in there, like an immediate ceasefire, with like a pathway to lasting peace, that kind of stuff, allowing aid in, and all that kind of stuff. But just to sort of like, really drive it home here, the only reason that this passed is because the US decided to abstain. Why they decided to abstain, absolutely no idea. They didn't veto it, so it passed. But all that stuff that Kira just said this has all happened this week after the ceasefire vote. So, is it really doing anything? No is the answer to that.
If anything is being done, I think what's happening is the contradictions are sharpening for the proletariat, right? For not, when I say proletariat, I mean that very vaguely. People that are not in the ruling class, right? People that are not, right, and what I mean by that is many people are like, horrible things happen in the world, but we have our institutions. And these institutions, they fight back when they have these checks and balances, and like there's always gonna be bad, but we have the responsibility to do good, and that good comes in the form of the United States government. That comes in the form of the UN. And they have this faith in these institutions that when shit hits the fan, these institutions will do the thing that they're supposed to do. And many people have this perspective with regards to police prior to the George Floyd's murder. And I was one of those people to an extent, actually. Like, I wasn't like so hard. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just say I probably was far worse than I like to give myself credit for, because I used to be very pro-police before that. I think by then I was softening a little bit, but very pro-police. And so many of those myths that I harbored, and those myths didn't come up. I didn't come up with them. We don't come up with these things. We're taught these things, right? We're forced to absorb these things. We're groomed to believe these things since birth. When you see the reality that challenges these notions so starkly, you see those contradictions sharpen between the reality that we're told is the reality versus the reality that is. I think that is an incredibly powerful thing. And I think with the UN passing the ceasefire, what do you call it? Ceasefire agreement?
Resolution.
Thank you. Resolution. And nothing changing will, for some people, not all, start to shatter those notions of like these institutional imperialist powers being forces of good and having any sort of teeth with regards to challenging American hegemony and the power of the imperial core.
I think that's pretty succinct, Kira.
Thank you.
Just mindful that our guest is in the waiting room, I'm going to quickly give you some good news about Palestine Action. They successfully shut down an Elbit factory in Tamworth in the UK this week. Completely shut it down. The Elbit were forced to like sell the factory and everything. All they did was basically get on the roof and take some tiles off, and then it rained. Boo-hoo. Oh no, what a shame. Guess they can't make weapons there anymore. Big up Palestine Action. Friends of the show, comrades of the show, Palestine Action. More updates from them to come. And then Tim, we could briefly have a based. Tim, what did you do this week that was based?
Probably, well, I mean, I was out of town for most of the week. I was attending, I'm wearing the shirt. I was attending this thing, Miora Ka Ora, which was it's like a symposium for traditional Maori tattooing and tattooists and carvers and artists and all that kind of stuff. And it was awesome. It was so much bigger than just like an art thing. There was like one of the co-leaders of the Maori Party was there. One of our probably the most famous activist in Aotearoa, Tamaiti, was there, and it was just like a couple days of all kinds of just like talking and Yeah, just kind of all kinds of like exchanging ideas and information. And it was like it was equally about the art and culture aspects as it was about like politics and, like decolonization and all this kind of stuff like that. Like there was no separation of any of that stuff. It was all pretty interlinked. Yeah, and it was great. Really, lots of talks about our I guess like our political responsibilities as people that often kind of become like ambassadors for culture, and also like when you're performing these traditional tattoos for people, like how that is, like some people will go into it just being like, I'm just going to get some stuff on my arm or whatever, and then actually turning that into a moment where it's like, I guess like could be like it's an educational moment to learn about not just the not just like what it means and what all this stuff is and all that kind of stuff, but also the kind of journey that a lot of activists and artists did together to even kind of maintain and revitalize our traditional art forms, and how that is inseparable from the kind of the wider struggle of like Maori liberation, things like that. So yeah, it was really great, really revitalizing, and also just really fun. Met a lot of people that I've known, like sort of just casually, or even known over like the internet and things like that. Got to hang out with a lot of people that I've known for a long time but never see anymore because I live all the way down south, and just a lot of people. Yeah, like I said, some really influential and really famous like activists that have been doing this kind of stuff for like 40 years or so, but also intermingling with people that are just kind of just starting the journey, and there's like no barrier whatsoever. It's just like a full open exchange of information. So yeah, so that was what I did for the early part. I think, yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's where I was. Yeah, that was my most base things. But yeah, why don't we do a quick little reminder that if you like what we do here and you want to help support us, you can jump on over to patreon.com/red_planet. There's a bunch of different tiers there that you can help support us. A couple bucks every month, all the way up to quite a bit every month. But yeah, if you like what we do and you want to support, that's a really good way to help us out.
So yeah, we got a guest it's for you. Very, very exciting. And I've got a little intro that I've sort of written in my head. So I'm going to go ahead and do it now. As capitalism enters its hyper late stages, we are going to start to see more and more of our bills going up super, super high. Just everyday costs, everyday things that we have to consider in order to live, in order to heat our homes, in order to make sure our homes are not falling apart underneath us, and also, to be able to just like survive, just in general. Capitalism is just going to ramp up this stuff into overdrive. And what can we do to resist that? Well, our guest today was part of organizing a resistance to that kind of thing. Essentially, energy bills going up all over the UK as a result of the Ofgem cap being lifted by the vile Tory government. And Jade is here today from Don't Pay to talk about that. So Jade, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of info on what you were doing with Don't Pay? It was around the middle of last year, wasn't it?
Hi. Yeah, it was. I mean, don't pay within don't pay your energy bills kind of middled off towards the middle of last year, which is but it started the Christmas when all the bills were going up, and we'd had I think there'd been the explosion and other stuff that had happened that meant that all the gas prices are going up and up and up. We were all having to pay for it. is when we got started, like the August. So we're around for about a year as they don't pay energy bill. So hi.
And what exactly and what exactly was the aims of Don't Pay? I mean, it sounds pretty self-explanatory in the name of the org, but just for people who are unfamiliar with it, just give us a rundown on what the actual aims were.
Yeah. So basically, we had the aim of to have everybody's debt be cancelled. If you had debt with energy bills, that was just to be cancelled, and for the rates to revert back to what they were before August, because we basically were saying, well, this is, if you're saying this is capitalist system, the capitalist system is that sometimes you're going to lose money, and that's what should be happening right now. Basically, is you should be losing the money. You've made this, it's your capitalist investment. Sometimes it's supposed to lose money, sometimes it's supposed to make money, and it's not supposed to fall on the people to pay for that, I guess. This was kind of our point. Yeah, so that's kind of what we went in with, the strike. So then we were going to strike if we didn't get what we wanted, which was just everyone's just going to stop paying the energy bills, and hopefully that would bring them to negotiation. Yeah.
And I think it's such an important thing to talk about, because what other choice do people have when the corporate overlords that run this show decide to go, well, you were paying £90, because this was me, I was paying £90 a maximum during winter. That my energy bills were about £90, and I've got these terrible electric heaters that are inefficient, absolute dog shit, and I still only had to pay about £90 with the fucking heaters on all day, every day during winter. And then all of a sudden they just skyrocketed to what am I paying? I was paying like 160 for a bit, and now I'm down to like 120, but I'm in debt with them and everything. And this is the case for like pretty much everybody in the UK. So that's the question. The question is, what are working class people supposed to do when you just can't afford to pay your bills? And like you said, everyone is getting in debt. So talk to us a little bit about the process, because that can be a really daunting task, trying to encourage people to essentially, it's not a rent strike, it's not a withholding labor strike, it's literally, we're withholding this money that you're charging us for heating our homes strike. So what were the kind of challenges that you faced in agitating people and radicalizing them to get to that point?
I mean, to be honest, like we got quite a bit of media coverage, because I think they just thought we were a bit soft and weird and something to like bring on as a bit of a funny thing. So we actually managed to pick up a lot of people quite quickly. I mean, that's how I got involved, as I saw it on the TV, and I was like, well, that makes sense to me. I don't know if is this quite an American audience for this, isn't there? So there's like, I don't know if people know the history of non-payment kind of campaigns in the UK, but I could talk about it's actually a very like topical day for it, because it is actually the 34th anniversary of the poll riots. So the poll tax riots were 34 years ago today, and that's something that we always lean on in Don't Pay, because these are very famous like non-payment protest in the UK is the poll tax. So if you don't know what the poll tax is, nowadays we pay council tax, but before there was council tax, before there was poll tax, you had something called rates, which was kind of a mean tested tax that you would pay to your local council. It was based off of how much you could rent your house out for. So very like means tested and based on the house that you live in. And then what Margaret Thatcher tried to do, which didn't go over well, was she tried to bring in a flat rate of tax for everybody. So that was called poll tax. It got, because that gave it a very negative connotation of like, if you want to be able to vote, you have to pay this tax. And they kind of tied that together in that activism when they were doing about the poll tax. They kind of tied that together to make people angry about it, and that worked. That is a, I mean, we ended up having to pay council tax, but that's just what happens in negotiation, right? We didn't end up with a poll tax. We went back to a means tested council tax, which is what we have in place today, which is like, you have different bands based on, I think, how many rooms your house has now. something like that.
It's all sorts of
Yeah.
weird means testing they do to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, yeah, I'm like in one bed, so I'm in A, which is like the lowest thing, and then there's like other stuff based on being a single person, but it was going to just be a flat rate of tax. So what ended up happening was people did non-payment campaigns. It was up and down the country. I mean, I think it did start mainly in the north because the miners started it because they were already very, am I allowed to swear? They were already
You are absolutely allowed to swear. Don't worry about it.
I was going to say they were pretty pissed off with Margaret Thatcher already, so this is just another thing on top of that. So it started there, and then by the time it hit London, yeah, I mean, people say that British people don't flip cars and set things on fire, but we did flip cars and set things on fire 34 years ago. So yeah, so that got repealed, and we got the compromise of having council tax. But when you don't pay taxes, obviously it's like that's a very high level of non-compliance, so people going to prison for that and everything. It was and it went on for years, so it went on for a few years before it was repealed. So that's kind of where don't pay came from. The idea of don't pay came from. It's like we had this history in the UK of being like, actually no, I'm not going to pay for that if that makes no sense. Like I shouldn't be paying for that thing, so I'm actually not going to pay for it. We do have a history of doing that, so we lean on that quite a lot when we were trying to talk to people in the street. But I mean, it's like you said then, people's energy bills like doubled overnight. I couldn't afford to pay it, and at the time I had an all right job. Everything, shouldn't have had any problems being able to pay, but I was falling in. So sorry, what we did in don't pay, people would fall into two camps. So it's like can't pay and won't pay. So there's a whole group of people that no matter what, they're not going to be able to pay. And then there's the won't pay, and those people are kind of the strike support to the people that can't pay. So that's as well another way that when we were talking to people about it, we talk about it. It's like, well, there is this whole group of people that absolutely cannot pay it. So the thing that we're going to do to help those people is to stand in solidarity with them and become a much bigger group of people. So I think we said 100,000 because again, that's the amount of people that went to the poll tax riots. 100,000 people went to the poll tax riots. So 100,000 people, once they were signed up to strike, was when we were going to strike, and that would be a mixture of can't and won't pay. But within that whole, a lot of people doing it meant we could put more pressure on, which we did. I could talk about that as well, but yeah, we did get
absolutely. Oh yeah, we've got so much to talk about because it's such a broad topic. Like there are so many elements of it. Because if you think about the power companies, the energy companies that were doing this in the UK, you've got companies like Shell. Shell are doing energy. Shell are one of the most violent, complicit companies in the climate catastrophe, climate genocide that we're seeing. You've also got British Gas. They're definitely not innocent in a lot of ways, and they're earning a shit ton of dough. It's not like these companies are struggling for the cash. This was simply an opportunity for the government to say to their rich mates who run these companies, here's a bit of dough, is a bit more money for the kitty, as it were, kind of thing. So in terms of what kind of a response, like obviously Don't Pay was on the TV, and what kind of a response did you? Yeah, for a bit. Initially, did you get any kind of communication from any energy company to say, hello, what are you doing? This is silly. Please don't do it. Because I remember one particular guy was talking about, I don't think he mentioned the words don't pay, like the name of the campaign. I think he was just saying, oh, these silly little woke lefties saying they're not going to pay the bills. That's really silly and you shouldn't do that, right? I think that's like the amount that I saw of it on TV. So
Martin Moneyman, whatever he was called, I don't think he was very nice about it. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that guy, Martin Moneyman, moneysupermarketsaver.com, whatever his name is. Yeah. So what kind of a sort of response did you get from any of the energy companies?
We didn't get any like direct responses from the energy companies. I mean, there was a few people. I didn't go on any. I mean, this is my first time talking in the UK about Don't Pay, but I didn't go on anything. But there was a bit where they would invite us onto shows to kind of, debate, and these would be very short notice things. I think we've experienced that kind of stuff before, but so you get very short notice pulled up onto a TV show to go and talk about it. But it's a very simple kind of idea. So there's not a lot for us to actually have to explain to people about it. It's like, well, we're not going to pay our energy bills because it's too high. Like, that's it. That's the whole campaign. That's the end of the campaign. So it's not really complicated, and it's single issue, and it's not right, left political, which was very important for us as well. It was really important to make sure that we did. I mean, a lot of us were lefties, but that didn't mean that this came up in some interviews that I did. If somebody was an anti-vaxxer, they could be in the don't pay, but that's not what we're not talking about. Anti-vaxxer, that's not a part for you to talk about that, or any other right-wing weird theory you've got. We are just talking about energy bills and any weird left-wing theory as well. Same side, but we've got to focus it on this one issue, and that really helped put the message across. And I think that's when we started getting kind of cut off any English media TV, but that is when like French media, Swedish media, other places were picking us up. So we did interviews through to like October, September with international media, but that had already all dried up for the English media by then. There was, I think, like a local newspaper was coming down to our protest in Manchester, but it wasn't anything other than that. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you had, a little bit of initial response, but then as soon as you announced that you were non-partisan, all the media stuff died, because I guess the way that then they couldn't paint you was as weird, crusty lefties who are just deciding to not pay the bills. It's like, no, actually, like, this affects everybody, in fact.
We had we had doctors that were with us, a lot of the doctors were already striking for other reasons, but, we had a lot of like what would be considered, I guess, like middle class professionals within UK like class system society. Lots of those people were on our sides, and it was so you put those people for like, I'll just be real with how like the UK works. Put those people forward to talk about it, people are going to listen to them a little bit more, and that's kind of what was happening. And like I say, it was just a simple message of like, this is unfair, so we're not going to do it. It wasn't like, I don't know, not to crap on anyone else's other campaign, but it wasn't as broad as some campaigns about things could be. I mean, even like housing, for example, that is so broad, and there's loads of different things you get involved in on that side of it, but it was just really specific. And it became a lot more about, like, towards the end particularly, about debt help and us all understanding the debt laws and supporting each other through that kind of thing. So yeah, there's
Well, that is what I was going to ask you next, because, of course, you had like the two different camps. You had won't pay, and can't pay.
Yeah.
Obviously, can't pay, are the more urgent, sort of like participants in the campaign to try and support and give advice to and all that kind of stuff. And won't pay are obviously like, like you said, the strike support. So when it came to understanding debt and understanding people's rights, what kind of challenges did you come up against in educating people on that and learning yourselves?
I mean, a lot of people still seem to think that there are certain types of debt in the UK you can go to prison for. I'll talk about it in a sec. We'll talk about how it's like developed and stuff. But a lot of the time, the main thing that I would encounter when I was on the street and leafleting people was people thinking that you could go to prison for having debt. You can't go to prison for having debt in the UK unless you've not paid the government money. But debt, we don't have debt as prisons here anymore. That's a very Victorian kind of idea. But people did seem to still think it existed, which was like kind of mind-blowing to me, that that's what people were afraid of a lot of the time. And it was just kind of like, well, that's not actually a thing. And then we did as well, like you say, because we were saying people would try and like act like we didn't know what we were talking about, and that we were going to get people into loads of debt that they weren't going to be able to deal with or understand, or and then we'd leave people in a much worse situation than what we found them in. But that just wasn't. We had so many like so in the UK, to be able to give debt advice, you do actually have to be qualified and have like an accreditation. Otherwise, you're not allowed to give debt advice to people. So we did have accredited debt advisors giving us advice on how to help people, and then we still had access to them. So in Manchester, which is where I was organising, we had access to. I'm not going to say names because they don't want to be associated with the campaign, unfortunately. But like, they were giving us direct advice, and we could go to them to ask them questions if there was stuff that was happening. But because they're an accredited debt advisor, they were there, and because the way that people joined into Don't Pay, it meant that you had a lot of people from a lot of different organizations feeding in, so we could cross-reference and get that kind of stuff. So then we ended up holding, like, that's kind of how we started promoting ourselves in Manchester after back. That was through these Know Your Debt Right sessions that we were trying to hold to people. So that's kind of how we started angling it to bring people in, particularly towards after, the energy bursary that we ended up getting.
So yeah, that's really interesting. So just in case people aren't aware, the government did end up conceding to the fact that energy bills were just too expensive, and ended up paying like a percentage. I think that I got like £40 a month or something. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but if you were like really struggling and poor, like you got like a bit of dough in order to help you pay, and it would just be automatically applied through your energy company. So it was a little bit dodgy. I think there were some kind of concerns that like energy companies weren't doing it properly, or they weren't applying it to the right people or whatever. And I'm not entirely sure about the ins and outs of that. But I think it's really interesting, that observation that you made about people thinking that you can go to prison for being in debt, right? Because this is like a very capitalist, realist thing. If you are so, I guess, just brainwashed in the neoliberal society that we live in, you just think like money is the most important thing. And so if I haven't been able to pay my way in society, then I should be put in the stocks and laughed at and, humiliated for the rest of my life. And that is like, it's because people just associate not being able to pay for certain things with going to prison, like being punished. Like you aren't participating in society, you aren't participating in the project, in capitalism, so you get punished. So that's a really interesting observation that you made, and I think that it says a lot, right? Because as soon as you realize, oh, actually that's not the case, that's quite empowering. That's quite empowering.
It was really weird to me to find people that still did actually believe that. But yeah, there was a few times where people would be like, well, why are you setting people up to go to prison? And you're just like, it's not what it's not what was gonna happen. But yeah. The thing I was gonna say though about the energy bursary is like, so that's the thing, that when the energy bursary happened, it was like just before October that they brought it in. Obviously our strike date was originally going to be the 1st of October, but we didn't hit 100,000 people signed up. I think we were at still 60 or 70,000 people, so it still wasn't like the amount that we'd said. And I'll talk about all the other things that happened after that. But what had actually happened was, I can't remember, it might have been EDF wrote to, what was his name, the energy minister we had for 5 minutes at the time, Kwasi Kwarteng, I think.
Kwasi Kwarteng,
that was it. They wrote to him and they said they did name Don't Pay as like something that they were concerned about for their bottom line, basically. And they basically said that's how that question came around to the government, of saying, this is what you should do. You should give everybody a bursary through us to pay off when people can't pay. And that, I mean, if you think about it in terms of like a long-term negotiation, that's a win to us, because we're asking obviously for a really extreme thing, but we have actually, we were named within that thing as a pressure to bring about that energy bursary for people, which did help, I think, in the end. I know it helped. It took me out of can't pay to won't pay. So, I'm sure it helped other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was it was one of the, I remember feeling when it got announced, I was like, well, that's good. But you should just bring the cap down. Just bring the cap down. Like, what the fuck? And this is something that's happened now. If we're talking like contemporarily about this issue, like the off-gem cap is being brought down again, isn't it? I don't know when that is.
I think it's April, from my bill anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is clearly like because what they're realizing is that, just putting people into debt isn't fucking sustainable, actually. Like, you can't, like, you're claiming money off people that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So where are you putting that money?
there is a point as well, especially with the debt, like the debt thing within England. If you don't actually, if you're under a certain age, you probably don't own enough assets to actually have debt impact you. That was something that we really noticed when we were doing this as well. Like for me, I don't own a house, I don't own a car. It is really hard. It's actually really hard for them to collect anything on me because I don't own anything that they can collect from me. So if I did get into a lot of debt, I could you can pay £90 to the government and it will all go. So it's actually like it's not within their best interests for them to absolutely overload us with debt in the way that they are, unless you do own an asset and you are in a bit of a shitter because they can take that from you. But most people under 35 these days, pretty untouchable in terms of debt. So
yeah, it's one of those situations where I feel like what has happened is, Tories, the energy minister, they're all sat there and they're going, well, we're making a lot of, energy companies making a lot of money from people in general. And actually what we could do is we could just, get them to be charged even more. And then as a result of that, people are so scared to not participate in the system because they're not thinking about, I need to pay for the energy that I've used this month. They're thinking, I need to pay for the energy that I'm already in debt for from last month and the month before, the month before, the month before. It's like they're trying to create this debtors society, right? It's finance capital, I think, is the way that people refer to it. And it's just the companies are sat there and they're going, yeah, no, this isn't working for us, bro. Like it's simply like it's not real money, it's not working, it doesn't count as like actual assets or whatever. I don't know how any of that fucking corporate shit works, but it's like, clearly
there's a lot of, I think the thing as well doing this as well, we realize people are really embarrassed about talking about the debt that they do have. Most people, I think, in this country are in debt in some way. So it's actually like, most people are in debt, and it's just something that we just don't talk about as a society properly at all. Which, again, when we were doing the debt advice things with people, we'd find out, it's not, this energy bill thing was just the last straw on their rising costs over the last 10 years of shit government that we've had. So,
yeah, well, this is it. It's like, I actually watched I, Daniel Blake last night for the first time, and that was filmed in 2015. For those listeners and viewers of the show that don't know what the movie is about, it's a classic Ken Loach kitchen sink drama. Ken Loach is a British director, and he basically did this. I think it's based on a true story, but it was about a guy in Tory Britain, an older fella in Newcastle called Daniel, and his wife was dead, and he'd had an heart attack and he couldn't work, and he was trying to get through the DWP, and it was just a fucking nightmare, as it has been. And this was, this was in 2015. This was filmed in 2015. It was written in 2014, which was like 4 years of the initial Tory rule. After the Labour government in 2010, I think they went out. I can't remember. And it's been another 10 years since that. So people are really fucking struggling. It feels much longer. It feels like a some kind of horrific interdimensional nightmare, but that's a life in Britain. So yeah, I think it's really important to talk about, because a campaign like this can be so incredibly, I think, overwhelming to try and organize, because if you are doing something so radical as like a non-payment strike, people are going to be so hesitant, wary, because of all those things that you mentioned, because they thought, oh, you could get put in prison and all that kind of stuff. But it's a direct attack at capital. Capital uses money to control us, and you're ultimately saying, yes, we're simply not doing that. Actually, we're not playing the game. We're not participating in the system. So in terms of like offshoot campaigns and related stuff. We spoke earlier on the phone this week. Just so everyone's clear, full transparency, me and Jade are comrades. We're in the tenants union together. But this is why she's on the show. No, it's not. Don't Pay is very good. I wanted to talk about it for a long time. But we spoke on the phone earlier this week, and you were talking about these other offshoot campaigns that came from Don't Pay Manchester. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about some of the good stuff and some of the weird stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did. I've done a bit of research and everything for this, so I know what I'm talking about, especially with the voters one. But we'll get on to the voters one. So there's been a few different since we wound down August last year. I do still have. We organise through WhatsApp, just so everyone understands if you don't know about Don't Pay. So I still got all the WhatsApp chats. So we've not wound down fully. Some people who were doing Don't Pay are doing something called Fuel Poverty Action. A Fuel Poverty Action campaign is to try and get a kind of living rate for energy, have that capped, and also have a rate as well for people who are unemployed, non-job seekers, and on benefits, which I think is a good campaign. I think they could be asking for a bit more, but I think it's good. It's a good campaign. There's a lot of good people in it, so I do recommend that one. That one's a good one. There is also there's a really interesting one actually that I really like, which is because it's really similar, really simple in the same way of don't pay water bills. I'm pretty sure that that's an offshoot of XR. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. So if anybody isn't from the UK and doesn't know about our awful water companies, they are literally pumping shit into our waterways. I can't be any more clear as that. That's literally happening.
It's literally that. Yeah.
It's literally that. In Manchester, even the people have been complaining it smells like shit because of the shit being pumped into the river. It's everywhere. We're all over England. Every water company you can think of, because basically they've used to be publicly owned. They became capitalist owners and shareholders, etc. Told that no, this is great. It's going to be all this investment in it, but obviously they do what they do, which is suck all the money out. There's been no investment. Everything's broken. Shit's going into the river now. We're at that kind of point with it, and there's nothing really being done about it. So, but what's fun about water bills is there's actually a lot of laws around what they're allowed to do if you don't pay your water bill. They can't shut off your water. They can't leave you without water. But they can leave you without electricity. They can leave you without gas. They can put a lot of things in place for that, but they can't do it with water. There's also a lot of I need to look into a level. If you own your house, things again get more ropey. If you don't own your house, there's actually very little they can really do if you're not paying your water bill. Things are getting a bit harsher on that now. I've seen, I don't know if anybody saw recently, well, no, probably not, this is very much my special interest, but recently the energy regulator turned around to the water companies and said they were being too harsh on collecting debts from people, which says to me that a lot of people are probably doing it because they're getting a bit upset and held about people not paying the bills on it. But yeah, to me it just, and also we've got in the south, we've got Thames Water, is it, that are about to go into administration. So whether or not the newspapers want to talk about it, if you go, I don't know where I came across it, was in Hebden Bridge, but but they are up and down. If there's a river going through your town, you probably see these don't pay your water bills campaigners up and down the country, and I think they're really, really good. And I think that's an easily doable campaign. It will take them a few years to be able to do anything to you, I think, if you're not paying your water bill. And by then, they're running now. They're falling apart. Some of them are already getting into administration, and I think that's a good one.
There was a really cursed thread from a Tory minister or a Tory MP that I was reading where he was saying something like, "Yeah, it's gone into administration, so an administrator should run it."
Oh yeah, no, that was Rees-Mogg, wasn't it?
Was that? Yeah, it was Rees-Mogg. Yeah, and he's basically saying it should be public but private, but his brain doesn't work in that in the correct way. I mean, so yeah.
Unfortunately for Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think he's been a bit broken in the brain since about 12 years old. I think that documentary is about him.
Haunted Pencil, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I don't know when he's oh, I just love stocks, and he's like 11, and his dad's talking. It's a very weird documentary about him, and he's like, oh, that's it. He's going campaigning with his nanny through like, oh, it's awful. And this man is exactly like I'm gonna say he looks like a Dino character. I hope that
he does. No, he does. He looks like what's it called? Walter the Softie, innit?
Yeah, he does. Walter the Softie.
It's the most British thing I've heard.
We're talking about a very old British comic book for children that like I used to collect and Jade probably read. If you don't know what it's about, yeah, it's definitely dead British.
Yeah.
But Jacob Rees-Mogg looks like this character, Walter the Softie. Yeah, it might even be based on him for all we know.
I think it might be older than him. He might have looked at that and been like, yeah, that's who I want to be when I grow up.
That's true. It's an old comic, isn't it? Yeah, I forgot about that.
Because he's not actually that old. He just seems like he is straight out of Victorian England. So it's really like weird. He also, I mean, yeah, we're just going on a Jacob Rees-Mogg bitch now.
It's fine. We got another. We got so much time.
He fell asleep. He fell asleep in the Commons and put his legs up on that. Well, I was very disrespectful and horrible, especially from a Tory politician acting like the House of Commons was like literally like he was a public school. He went and put his like legs up, having a nap while he's supposed to be working. And that picture was very famous for a while, and it made me really hate him. But yeah, not. Yeah, I was really moody with that tweet that he put out because I was like, yeah, I half agree with you, and I hate that it's you that said it, but also like it shouldn't be an admission. Just own it again. Like
he doesn't understand. Like his brain is like halfway there to going like nationalize it, but it just is not allowing him to say it. He can't bring himself to possibly think of anything so communist as to nationalize Thames Water to fix it.
You get a lot of these people that they don't actually have a very good political education or like a consistent ideology. So then every now and then they'll say something and it'll be like, look, he's got to this point, but he's come through a weird way to get there, you know, like, and it isn't indicative of his ideas as a whole, you know.
Yeah, it's also the lens of his Victorian capitalist, like it's really, and that I think explains him really well.
Can't stress this enough. He's not from the Victorian era, but like no, it is like a Victorian tinted glasses that he's got on, isn't it? Yeah,
he is very much. Well, he just loves that vibe. I think he is a Victorian cosplayer, really.
So you've got like the Don't Pay Water campaign, and that is very interesting as well because it is like, you know, it's very British, I think, actually, to have like all these laws protecting water, because it's like there was that time in like the 70s, post-war up until the 70s, when we were very close to having like some semblance of socialism, and you know, there was a lot of and then Margaret Thatcher happened, and but unfortunately there were all these laws that were like signed into permanence, which became the part of the Constitution, because that's how laws and the Constitution works in the UK. We had Jesso Thompson to talk about that a few months ago now, so now these like rights of people to be able to access drinking water and stuff like that are like enshrined in our constitution that isn't really a proper constitution. But anyway, it's so incredibly bizarre, but it's like you say, it's a really good campaign to get involved in if you are a person who can't afford to pay your water bills, because they're not going to be able to do anything. They're not going to be able to put you in prison. They're not going to be able to stop your water. It's literally protected by these things, but it's also a good way to fight privatization, which I think is the key thing, really, right? Because if we had nationalized energy, if we had nationalized water, none of this would be a problem, because it would be affordable and efficient. So talk about some other campaigns that are similar, that were like kind of offshoots to Don't Pay. I mean, you could continue to talk about the based ones, or you could talk about some of the cursed ones.
I'll bring in a couple of the cursed ones. I mean, like, I have been, because I told you about those Palestine one that I told you about as well, and I have done a bit more research that day, because I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to know what I was going to talk about it, because I'm a bit ropey on it. I'm still a bit ropey on it after doing this research on it. So it's basically, there's a Don't Pay Taxes campaign now. So that's about stop paying your taxes until the government stops funding genocide, basically. So that to me that's when I say there's no sort of debtors prison in England anymore or in the UK anymore. That's true unless you're not paying your taxes or you're not paying your council tax. If it becomes a tax issue, there are literally there's not even the police, there's tax police that will come and arrest you and you will be in prison for however long it is. Plus then you still have to pay the tax and all that. So that's the one where I get a bit more ropey with, because I don't want people to go, I don't want to throw people over the trenches into prison if they're not fully aware that that's what they're going to be putting themselves up for. And I've looked at their website today, so I think they're called Taxes for Palestine or something like that. I would have to hold on. I'll bring my phone again, so I'm not just talking crap.
Well, what's really funny is that you're bringing this up, and I was reminded that me and you were in a lot of the same WhatsApp groups actually, and because I heard your phone go and mine went off at the same time. But I remember seeing this. I remember it was in one of the WhatsApp groups about Palestine stuff. Someone was talking about this a while ago.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't see that. I've only seen it through the Don't Pay channels. I've not seen it, so I guess in the Palestine block it might have been there. But
Yeah. It was in that one, and I remember someone was saying does anyone think that this is good or a good idea? And it was just someone on Instagram posting we should stop paying our taxes because they're going towards genocide. And my first reaction was don't do this, you'll go to jail. This is really daft.
Yeah. That's just somebody that's don't pay other bills,
Well, and also there are so many other ways that you can fight the genocide in Gaza, right? There are so many other ways you could, I don't know. I would never encourage anyone to break the law, but people are just going to end up going and joining, Palestine Action and doing, actions with Palestine Action that may end up being illegal or whatever. But you could also, I guess write to your MP if that'll do anything. Anyway, you know what I mean. So there are lots of other ways. There are lots of other ways to support, Palestine other than not paying your bills. So talk to us more about this specific campaign.
So it is called No Taxes for Genocide is what they're calling it. Which and I've gone on and they have actually because when I spoke to you about it, I just heard about it through the Don't Pay chats. It had come up and same thing where people had been hey, what do you think about this? And my initial reaction was, oh my god, no. People are gonna go to prison, don't like it, because it seems so washy. But I have gone on the website to say they have got a case. Well, so they've got a KC advising them. So in the UK, a KC is the King's Council. It used to be called the Queen's Council. It's just a fancy name for a higher level solicitor, lawyer. So they have.
There was a TV show called Kavanagh QC, wasn't there? And now I finally know what QC means after all these years. So there you go.
Yeah, it's just a fancy name for a solicitor in the UK that's been a solicitor for a long time, or can be trusted on a certain topic or something like that. So they have got a KC advising them. That person obviously isn't named. You can't see who that is, but there's very little detail on the website at the moment about it. So that's one thing. They have got somebody that they've kind of got doing that they've got as their basis. It's not just Don't Pay. They have another guy, another activist. He's not been paying his council tax for about 3 years. He hasn't gone to prison though. So the way that they are thinking at the moment, whether this will be what the plan is or not, but is that you'll still have to pay your taxes. We're not going to not be able to pay our taxes. That's always going to be a thing. But you put your taxes into a trust, and then the trust says this trust will pay out to the government when the government can prove that, as per UN law, it is not it's not using this money for genocide or for wars or whatever, which makes sense. But I do notice that this guy that's been doing it for a couple of years, he's only managed to do it for council tax. He's not managed to do it. So the way that taxes are paid in the UK, usually, because most people are employed, salaried by a company here, is you do something called PAYE, which means that your company that you work for automatically takes taxes out of your income. So the take-home pay that you get that's taxed already, and that's all yours, and there's no worries about having to go back and pay taxes. It usually comes the other way around, where we might get a bit extra taken from us through the year and not noticed, and get like £100 back at the end if we're working 2 jobs or something. So it gets a bit more ropey, I think, definitely with like the PAYE. At the moment, they're saying that the idea that they have is that you would probably write to HMRC and say any of my PAYE money that goes to you actually needs to be paid to this trust. But then why would they agree to that, and why would they keep to that? It doesn't. There's a lot of questions around it, and I worry through publicizing it that because we had this happen of Don't Pay, people would just stop paying and not understand fully the purpose of the strike, which is definitely something we encountered with Don't Pay, where we had people that had already cancelled their energy bills and were like, oh, I just thought that's what we're supposed to do. And it's like, well, we've done it now, so we'll support you through it. But like, it's, so yes, you'll have that miscommunication, and that could really easily, I think, lead in. But so yeah, I'd like to see what the KC says, but
I think it sounds pretty legit, because at the end of the day, that is the International Court's ruling. That was this week. I think that they actually were like, yeah, you've got to stop doing genocide, and people have to stop sending arms to them. Like that was one of the big stories this week. The UK government are being pressured by actual UK lawyers to say, like, yeah, you're breaking international law, actually. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that plays out, actually. So yeah, and actually, talk to us then a bit about that, because I feel like we've like skipped ahead a little bit here, but because we're now talking about these like offshoot campaigns. But you mentioned just then about like some people would just stop paying their energy bills and be like, right, I've done Don't Pay. This is it. I've done it, right? So what was the whole, I don't know, the process? Like, I guess, because I think I remember like looking into some of it, because I had said that I was going to take part. But I remember there being like a thing where it was like you had to like speak to your energy provider and actually make the statement to them and say, I'm partaking in a campaign. I'm not going to pay my energy bills until et cetera, or what was the actual thing that you had to do?
Yeah, but do you think, well, in the end, technically, I mean, we did strike in the end. I will talk about how that went down, because this is after now. Yeah, we're getting into kind of like the reflections and learning part of the campaign, I guess. Because I know there was people that we know within the tenants union that were also working with us on this, had a lot of strong feelings about like going on strike and things like that. A lot of people in Manchester did. But yeah, I'll talk about how we led up. So we did have a few people that would come up to us and just say, well, I thought that's what we were doing. We're supposed to be going on a strike, so I've strike. But we always had said that when we hit 100,000, or the first thing that we said, this is the first problem. The first thing we said was 1st of October, we're all going to strike. Whoever signed up, we're all going to strike. That changed very quickly when we realized we need to have the numbers. So then it became, forget 1st of October, we will strike when we get hit 100,000 people that are saying that they're ready to strike. Because again, poll tax, leaning on that a lot, so it feeds into that. So that was the initial thing, and we often, so it's a very flat structure to it. Nobody was like in charge of the strike. It wasn't organized like that. Don't Pay at all. There's no kind of like hierarchical structure to it. It was literally like you signed up, you got put into a WhatsApp group with your postcode. So like in the UK, like the first part of your postcode, you'd be put in with everybody else. That's obviously a very different situation based on where you are in the UK. If I was back in Scunthorpe, my postcode would cover a huge like geographical area. But in Manchester, that becomes like small pockets of Manchester, because it's based on how many people live there and whatever. So it works a little bit, but it gets, yeah. So we once everybody was kind of put into those WhatsApp groups, a kind of hierarchy started to emerge, but it was more through like capacity and time, like who had the most time to put towards the campaign to do XYZ, or who had the best skills for this or whatever. Just your usual kind of, I guess, anarchist style organizing of like, we have 10 people with lots of time to do this. What's the best use of everybody's time? And then we would have really regular, I think it was twice a month at least, we would have a national meeting with everybody. So, and then we would always make sure that there was a representative from every kind of major area within the UK. So there'd be somebody from Greater Manchester. It wouldn't be the same person all the time. Like somebody would go in, say the bit for what we thought within Greater Manchester, and then that information would then come back to our in-person meetings in Manchester. We'd talk about it, and then we'd feed back into the main group through Zoom. Hey, this is what we think. So you would have just off like the top of my head of like major areas. There's like Newcastle, Greater Manchester one, Bristol was a big one. Obviously, you know, if you know the UK, Bristol obviously are going to be a big one. Who else? London, London's where it started. CNA to kind of they were the people. So if you hear the law of don't pay, it was started in a pub by some friends who thought that it was a good idea. I mean, they are seasoned activists as well. They weren't just some mates down the pub. But that's the kind of law of it. But yeah, it was very like they didn't want to make the decisions for everybody. It was kind of like, this is the idea, what do we do? Come back and go away and try and feed back and forth on that. Things kind of, yeah, once the EDF and Kwasi-Kwarteng thing had happened, that's when it kind of started to fall away, because you started losing. I mean, like at the time, the way that we saw it within Don't Pay was, oh, this is a hurt to our campaign. This is hurting us. This means that we can't do it. But now that I'm on the outside of it, I do see that as like, I mean, I had negotiation training the other day, and that's kind of solidified this for me as well. Is like, we were asking for a really, really, really big ask on purpose, knowing that that's probably not going to be the thing that we get, but we did actually get those winter fuel payments for everybody, and that is actually really important. I think it's massively important, and without us doing this non-payment campaign, even ramping it up in the way that we did, it might not have happened. So at the time when it was happening, it hurt. It was like, oh no, they're hurting us. But yeah, I think when you look at it logically, we did actually help a lot. Not obviously can't help everybody, but like there was still people even with the winter money campaign, and we supported them all through the winter. There was always people there, you know, whether it was in chats to talk about that, to get debt advice and all those things. So but we had the 1st of October as the first strike date, then it was 100,000. And then as it got to December, so 1st of December was kind of became like we need to strike now or we're never going to strike. And I'm not really sure why that became the narrative across the whole of the UK. And I think the real warning sign for everybody, what should have been when Bristol just said no, and they kind of dropped off at that point. And I think if Bristol aren't going for it, if this is very UK based, I guess, but if Bristol aren't going for it, the rest of the people are probably going to go for it. So that should have been a bit more of a warning shot than I think hit a few people that were kind of pushing for the idea of that we should just go ahead and strike. In Manchester, I know our position was we wanted to do a strike ballot, which is what a union would do if they were striking, right? There was a lot of hesitancy to do that because we were worried about how that would play in the media if we didn't have a strong support to strike. Like it would undermine other non-payment strikes in the future or something like that, which I can see that, but it is also like I do agree with the Greater Manchester position. It wasn't my position at all at the time, but I do agree with it now. Is like you do need to understand who actually has the appetite to strike, because then when they called the strike, the appetite wasn't there anymore to do it. The people that had signed up back when there was no funding, there was no help, and now like I think I was getting like 60, 70 pounds a month off my bill, and you know, so people were getting like quite a bit of, I think it was like good to like 500-600 quid between everybody by the end of it. Not the best thing still. That just is basically subsidizing the energy companies for what we shouldn't be subsidizing them for, but at least it didn't completely come on the backs of like working people. So then once the 1st of December came and went, it was kind of just supporting everybody through that winter and then seeing where we were in the summer after that.
Buzzing, yeah. I think that negotiation stuff you were talking about is so important, right? Because a lot of the times when you're doing activism, especially if you're not. I mean, I know over the last 2 years, this has been my first proper foray into any kind of activism, and you think, damn, this is really big. Actually, like I'm going up against landlords. I'm going up against letting agents. This is really scary. They have a lot of power. I don't know what they're going to say when I send them this letter saying, please stop fucking over our member. But sometimes they say things and it's not what you expect. Like, you'll get like a letter from a letting agent and it'll be this sort of paltry response of, oh, well, actually, no, none of this is happening and blah, 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 blah. But then you sort of like rally and you go, no, they responded to us actually. So that means that they're taking us seriously to a degree, right? Or they see us as a threat. And if the EDF are at the very least mentioning you in this statement to Kwasi Kwarteng, then yeah, that's huge. Actually, it's massive. And even though you didn't get the target was 100,000, right? Even if you didn't get 100,000, that 60 to 70,000 that you did get was extremely powerful, and yeah, it got this massive win. And I think that's really where we have to see it as what it is, right? It's class war, right? We like this is legitimately what it is. And in wars, there is very, very rarely a decisive battle, right? There is very rarely a decisive battle. There are plenty of different battles, and you may win them, you may lose them. So failures can seem overwhelming and devastating. And also conversely, wins can seem like they're not wins. So we have to like be super aware of actually where we're at and what kind of an effect we're having when we're doing this stuff. So I think that's a really good reflection to come back on with that. Yeah. So with so everything kind of then just like fell off, I guess, with Don't Pay and what have you. So yeah, what's the script now? Yeah.
At the moment, I mean, if you go on the website, I think it's don'tpay.uk still. It's got a little statement on there that we're going to post up some reflections and learnings when we can. I don't know when anyone's going to have a chance to do that, but I'm sure it'll go up. And I know as well, like obviously I'm coming on and talking with you. I know that a few other people across the country have been asked to like talk about similar, right? Whether that's with more mainstream politics to the one yesterday, which was the oh God, I'm gonna get this messed up. There's a boaters strike. Don't pay your moorings or something like that. So that. So people. I hope like that. Yeah, we've not got anything up on the website at the moment, but hopefully because there's so many people involved and everybody had access to everything and everybody knew everything that was going on. If you want, as much as you wanted to know about what was going on within Don't Pay, it was open to everybody to understand what was happening. So I hope like it can be used to go on and create other campaigns. Like I say, I know there's some mainstream campaigns that have openly stated that they're trying to copy what we were doing, or what we did. So yeah, so there's in the way that we gained the localized kind of, because that was really important to it as well, I think, because if you have this campaign set up, that obviously I'm northern, I don't know if everyone knows about the north-south divide, it's very big, but like you have this campaign set up in London, you cannot, I really genuinely believe it, you cannot just lap it up from London and place it onto Manchester. I think they're completely, as much as we're in the same country, they are different cities and they've got different ways of working and different activists and different thoughts and feelings about things, of the vibe of the city, I guess. So it worked really well in that kind of like localized way, because like I say, like you can kind of talk about Bristol as an entity, even though there was all these different people in there, but there's kind of a vibe to what people in Bristol will probably think versus what people in Manchester will think. They'll be quite similar actually for Bristol and Manchester, less so with maybe London and Manchester. But yeah, it just meant that we came from the areas that we were asking for things from. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like somebody from London saying you should do this and you should do that, because if you're from Manchester, you probably won't listen to that very much. Yeah, and I think that was a really good part of it as well.
Yeah, the sort of like nation. It was a nationwide campaign, and yeah, just being like very, I guess, focused in those different areas is obviously something that was really, really important. And that's that. I think that would go for like pretty much anything, right? This is why most unions have branches in each city, and even within each city, they have multiple branches and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and now obviously, like, you know, that was, so like, you know, the first win was the you know, the concession from the government of like, well, you know, we're gonna have to give them some kind of an energy bursary to help people pay their bills. And now, like, again, you know, contemporarily, like they're bringing the cap down in April, so you know, there's going to be lower bills still for well, not lower bills still, because the bills remain the same, but there's going to be lower bills in April. And I think that, yeah, it's not just a combination of the things that, well, sorry, it's not just the things that we were talking about before, in that these companies are going, oh, this isn't sustainable, it's bad, actually. It's a combination of, you know, that and the amazing work of campaigns like Don't Pay, all the different media attention that was being had over the off-gem energy price cap being you know, raised, and all that kind of stuff. So it's, as always, it's a proper combination of different things that leads to change, but the change would not have happened if it wasn't for this grassroots activism. And so in talking about the, you know, the grassroots element of it, it was literally just some guys in a pub, and yeah, you say, you know, they were seasoned activists, but I think with something like this, it's quite simple, right? Because what do you need to organize a campaign like this? Well, you know, a website, and get some people into a WhatsApp group, get some social media on the go. Talk to us a little bit about the comms and all that kind of stuff, because I know that is specifically...
That is specifically what I did, yes.
This is what you were doing, this is what you do, this is your bag. Yeah, talk to us about that and how important that was.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, it was for Manchester, because of, well, if you're doing a camp, so I did the comms, I'll explain. I did the comms for Manchester, not for Don't Pay as a whole. There was somebody else in Manchester that was also doing comms for Don't Pay as a whole, who I know very well, but like I wasn't officially doing that. So I was officially the Manchester kind of thing. And again, that was just born out of the need for like the type of city that Manchester is. It's actually like, if you organise in Manchester, you'll know it's very hard to split us all up like that into, especially for a campaign like that isn't really well established in Manchester. Something like XR, for example, like Extinction Rebellion's been here for like nearly 10 years now. God, I've just realized what year it is. But like, you know, so that's been going for like a long time, and that's really established, and you have different parts of Manchester that do different things for that. But because this was a new thing, it was actually really hard for us all to be split up into these different WhatsApp groups based on our postcodes, because you have a very, I mean, it's just making Manchester, you have a lot of activists that are in South Manchester, fewer in North Manchester, but it's harder for those people from North Manchester to get to South Manchester, so it becomes like the travel thing and all of that. So we very quickly realised in Manchester we did need to kind of have like and some parts of Manchester are actually like a good hour drive to get to, if from some parts of Manchester, so like Bolton, Stockport. People always forget they're part of Manchester, but they are. They're just further away. So yeah, so it was more about just trying to keep us as showing a united front across Manchester and having the same messaging, because it was really, really hard. And you've got everybody in little WhatsApp groups, and maybe they've got like 10 people in this WhatsApp group because it's, you know, out in the warehouse bit of Manchester. For some reason, there's a few people that live in there, versus like, I don't know, my WhatsApp group, which had nearly 100 people in it for M20. So we realized really quickly that there was some people that just weren't getting the information to them. So eventually I am still in every WhatsApp group for Manchester. Every postcode of Manchester, I'm in that WhatsApp group. And I would just post the same message. So I'd spend half an hour just copy pasting the same message for all of those chats to make sure like everybody did know what was actually happening. Because that was the first thing I realized when I joined. It was like, because of the flat structure, it was really hard to understand what was happening in different places and different cities and what we could be doing. Like, because like the first thing I was like, why aren't we leafleting? Like, I've not seen any of us leafleting in Manchester, and Manchester's a very political city. So yeah, so the next thing we did was we had a meeting and we leafleted, like the next week in the city centre. And it does, when you're building it like that in Manchester, you do kind of have to start in the city centre. It can't really start we leafleted in the south of Manchester, but you kind of just preach into the choir at that point. With just focusing on the south of Manchester. So yeah, so we had to move ourselves up and kind of create, I guess, Manchester Don't Pay committee with everybody having like a different role. And I was given comms because at the time I worked from home, so everyone was like, "Oh, you can go in all the WhatsApp groups and post that, can't you?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah, I think that's one of the most key things, right? With I think every single aspect of organizing is just making sure that everybody is aware of the vision, having that like constant propaganda to reinforce exactly what the motivations are, exactly what the aims are, just to make sure that everybody is like, concentrating and staying focused, because that's the difference between mobilizing and organizing. Like we've spoken about that on the show before. Mobilizing is like, if you got like a bunch of people who are like very passionate and they want to do stuff, they will do it, but that can fall apart.
Burn out really fast.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's the burnout. It's that word that no one wants to talk about, but it's really important. If you just do too much stuff and that stuff is not getting the results that you want because you're not organized, you're gonna burn out and it's gonna suck. But yeah, that comms and connection between all the different branches is so key and so important. And then obviously, like you say, you got like the national side of it as well. Like, you got the national team feeding out to each regional team and making sure that everything is consistent.
Because if you want us to be able to, because like when I went back, not everybody can attend all the meetings, right? You can't always get the meeting in person or whatever, but you'll probably have an opinion you might chuck into the WhatsApp group when you've got 5 minutes. So it was important for me as well to like collect that information from all of the groups and feed that back up into those kind of nationalized meetings, whether I agreed with it or not. It was just like, this is the consensus within Manchester, right? And then make sure that those questions are kind of answered for people where I could, and like reassuring people that it's like, like XYZ is, because everybody had a lot of questions about what happens when the bailiffs come, what do I do with XYZ, and you can kind of funnel that information down and say, and funnel it up and say, these are the concerns, how are we going to address them, kind of thing, because there is always an answer to people's concerns. It just might not be the one that they want to hear, but there is always an answer.
Yeah, so like I think Don't Pay was such a really very, very good idea and a very, very good campaign to like, be a part of and stuff, in terms of like I was saying earlier, like just this direct, like, we are not participating, we're not getting involved in this system. I wonder if you have any like thoughts on potentially, because I know we've spoken about these offshoots, these Don't Pay offshoots that are like really good, like Don't Pay Water and all this kind of stuff. I wonder if you have any thoughts about like what this can be leveraged to do on like a bigger scale, or like what kind of things we might see in the future, if this is something like you've thought about before. Don't worry, I know that's a big question to ask.
That's okay. I think the Don't Pay Water one is my current favorite. It's really, I think that's really good. I mean, as soon as I started doing Don't Pay Energy, I thought, because if you paid your water bill in the UK, or you've not been able to pay your water bill in the UK for a month, so you kind of know the process of what happens to the water. And then once you learn about all the debt stuff to do with it. Well, they've got nothing they can really get you with at the moment. So whether that means that they're pushing for laws to come in so that they can treat it the same as energy, but there's water rights to get passed and things like that. So that would take a very long time. That's my favorite one. Where I can see it going in the future is a really, really big question. I do want to keep an eye on the no taxes for genocide. I'd like to see what they come out with from the KC for like the legal arguments. That they're saying at the moment that you could do it without informing your employer. I don't really know. Like I say, I don't know how it's going to work. Why would HMRC decide to go, oh yeah, all right, we won't take that one, move it to the trust for you? So I'd like to see how that progresses, and if that, is viable, I think that would be really good. I think though, like the main like talking about not paying bills and things like that, I do think the main thing like that I came away with a lot from that was kind of what I said before, which is that we have actually got a massive hidden debt crisis in this country, and we don't talk about it at all because people are embarrassed, and it's just pure like British embarrassment of, and like we talk about the cost of living now. Austerity was what we called it before that. So we have been in this situation for a decade now, and there are people I know there are people that are just living in credit, in debt, and living off credit to make their ends meet month to month. And when that will end, I don't think people really think about. They're just trying to get by, right, day to day, and that builds up and up and up. So I think, like, for me, a lot of the stuff that we learned through the debt side of Don't Pay will probably come in handy in the future, I think, for people doing activism and stuff like that, because well, it's like you were saying before, Mula, that it's going to come to a crisis point, I think, with debt in the UK. I don't know anybody. I mean, I'm 33, so my student loans are different to how a lot of younger people's student loans are in the UK now. That is real debt to them now. To me, it's a graduate tax, technically. To them, it is an actual loan with interest and is debt. So the debt crisis in the UK is like going to build and build and build and build and build.
Well, you're lucky because you went to uni when you left school. I didn't, and that's really fun to just have 60 grand of debt just there, just knowing that it's there. Yeah, you're right. The fucking graduate tax, but actually make it.
Yeah, I am graduate. So, well, I think mine is because mine is it's 2 per term, I think, in the end.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, because it was capped at 3 per term when I was still there, and £3,000 per term. But then because I went to art school and I didn't do a real degree, they knocked some money off. If you attend all your classes, they knock some money off if you go to art school. So I don't know if they still do that. That's not dead advice.
Well, I went to Salford to do music, and they definitely didn't fucking do that for me. So fuck them.
Yeah, shit situation.
Yeah, defo. But no, I think you're right. I think that like it is getting to a situation where it's going to become there's either going to be one or two things happen. It's either going to be people are just going to be constantly in debt for absolutely everything, including groceries, food shopping, all this kind of stuff. People are going to have to start taking out like mini loans to do anything because they're just not getting paid.
They already are. Uber Eats now has like a micro loan fucking thing on it. So if you want to get a takeaway,
that's so
Klarna
wild.
or something.
Klarna,
yeah.
Everything you can get on Klarna now. So
and people will realize, oh, money's made up, right? Money's it's not real. Like it's just simply not real. And so why should we fucking participate, right? So it's either going to result in this like mass radicalization via what's the word, disillusionment. Or it's gonna end up sort of, I guess, going like the climate what's the fascism one with climate Leviathan? There's climate Leviathan, climate Stalin, climate X. And the other one, Climate Behemoth. Climate Behemoth.
Climate Behemoth. Yeah, I knew it was like
I don't
something
think Climate
scary.
Stalin's one of them.
No, people don't like to use Climate Mao because it's xenophobic, right?
Oh,
Yeah, because it's just like, oh, the authoritarian communism of the Chinese, right? Like Stalin wasn't authoritarian. Anyway, but like, yeah, so it's yeah, so you got the Climate Behemoth element of it where, you know, it will become, debt will just become the new currency. So, you know, you've got the option where like, yeah, this devaluing of money in people's minds results in like radicalization and therefore pushback, or things just continue to get worse and we live in Mad Max, but everyone's in debt and oh Jesus Christ, yeah, it's just like a nightmare thinking about it.
The thing with the debt in the UK, it's like the Britishness that we have to get past, because even though I was doing all this stuff, like we're all talking about debt, there were still people too embarrassed in those chats to talk about their debt that they had, like whether that was debt apart from their energy bills, because plenty of people had that, or even just the energy bill that they brought up. There is just such they and the debt like the debt companies, the banks, the credit card companies, the places that you have debt at, the way that they try and force you to pay the debt, they use that shame to get you to pay them, right? That's why they send a bit like legally. I mean, if you're not paying your bills, or if you're not paying any bills, actually, if you've got no assets outside of your house to seize, bailiffs, unless they are for tax, can't come into your house unless you let them in. They can't like break down your door. Not they have to go through a lot of court orders to be able to do that. That is very, very far along, like a year or so of non-payment, non-speaking, and all of that. So like, you know, like even within that, like people too embarrassed to come forward, like and talk about it is yeah. And then you know, having the bailiff outside your house. Sorry, that's what I mean. You bailiff outside your house, all your neighbors now know that you're in debt. They're using that. They are using that against you. That is part of it. That's why he bangs on your door so loud. It's not to get you what it is, but to frighten you. But so your neighbors hear him as well, and he wants to have that conversation with you out in the street, so all your neighbors hear it. There is such a massive element of shame that is used by these companies, because if you didn't have the shame and you spoke about it, you would find the ways out of debt without paying them. That's the reality of it. It's like, say, you can pay that 95 quid to the government, declare yourself bankrupt as a person if you've got no assets under, I think it's 20,000. If you've got under 20,000 in assets and no like car or anything like that, you can just, you know, and if people knew that, then they wouldn't pay these bailiffs. They would probably just declare themselves bankrupt. So
yeah, absolutely. And that knowledge can help you in so many ways, right? Like, for example, we're in the tenants union, and while we would never advocate anyone breaking the law and doing a rent strike, if you were you know, potentially in debt with your arrears, that could be something that you might be able to do in that situation as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, any debt can be written off if you fall through the right hoops and do the right things. It's just like I say, not having the shame to tell somebody about it, whether it's a charity or what, you know, because there are, if anybody is in debt in the UK, there's loads of charities that can help you do it. So
and this shame is so like it is a massive prevalent thing in British society, like you say. Like it's even in Daniel Blake, where, you know, I was talking about this movie before. You know, the guy hides from one of his neighbors' kids who comes around to see if he's all right, because he is like so deeply, like, he's obviously behind on his bills, he's obviously behind on everything, he's already sold all of his furniture, and he's deeply, deeply ashamed. And British people find it just so hard because we live in this like this really bad country. It's
that's it.
It's just the worst. Like, you know, you everything from like parents to like, you know, fucking far removed family members to like people at school. Like it's all about inflicting shame on people for being poor. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so like, you know, but also like conversely, there's this weird sort of you know, social praising of you know, working class people in media. where it's like, you know, you'll get like someone who's wearing like a tracksuit, someone who's wearing like gold chains or whatever, you know, with a heavy accent, being dead popular, you know, like and stuff like that, like Shameless, a TV show like famously about poor people and Manchester in it, you know what I mean? Like everybody fucking loved that show. They loved that show so much that they made a fucking American version of it. No. Yeah, no one watches the American one because it's just not as good as the Manchester one.
There's probably Americans saying the exact same thing about the British one.
But the problem is, like, just to touch on that, the whole point of it is they live on a council estate. So I can't understand it within the US one, because I watch it and I'm like, how do they own a house? Like, that's not supposed to be the thing. So straight away it just loses all realism for me.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, you just have no empathy for any of the characters.
Yeah. There was a similar thing over here. We had this TV show set in West Auckland where I grew up called Outrageous Fortune, and it was about poor working class people. Well, it was about the lumpen proletariat, I should say. There were people that skirted legality to get by. Similar kind of vibe. And they did an American version of it, and it just didn't make sense because West Auckland is such just a unique place that it has like a very specific kind of vibe and the people that live there, you know, and it's just like you can't just transpose this thing. It just doesn't make sense. Just culturally it's all off. But yeah, no, so I sympathize.
Yeah. No, it's one of those, and it's like, so yeah, you got that simultaneous worshipping of the working class, like if you're a working class personality, or at least if you act working class
in the way that they want you to, of course, as well. You have to play the role of the working class comedian, don't you, really, to be able to the working class northern comedian. Not that I have a chip on my shoulder about the North South divide or anything.
Oh, we get that a lot done here as well. You know, like a politician will dress up for a photo op and they'll just be like wearing some like casual clothes, like a tracksuit and like, you know, like a little cap and sunglasses, and everyone will be like, look at this working class champion, like look at this legend, you know. And it's just like, you know, they just, you know, they go home and they take them off, like look at their shoes, look how clean those shoes are, you know, like it's like you know, we talk about it as like kayfabe, you know, like this like pro wrestling kind of like costuming and drama.
I know Kira wants to talk about how this is just basically John Fetterman all over, like John Fetterman, like, oh yeah, you know, I love wearing these big baggy hoodies and I wear shorts.
The big pants,
yeah. But actually the Vietnam War was good, and I wish I lived in Israel and I was killing Palestinian babies. Kira, any comments?
And I'm just gonna let that hang in the air. Extremely clippable.
We're just gonna clip that later and just make it sound like Mule is just saying these things. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do right after the show. Yeah,
thanks, comrades. We're all in this together. Yeah.
No, I was just laughing when y'all were talking about the left, or not the left, the North-South divide in England. I have so many British people in my community. I don't know why so many British people, but it's something that comes up a lot, is like the North-South divide. And I enjoy
Very
it.
important.
I enjoy it. It's fun for me.
It's funny because like I've been doing this activism that I've been doing in Manchester. I've met a lot more Southern people than I normally would, which is interesting. But they always say to me, like, it just doesn't, Southerners, it just doesn't, they just don't think it's a thing until they move here. And then they're like, oh, actually, I see this is a thing now. It's like, yeah, because you're the privileged class, aren't you? Can't see it until it's taken away. So
yeah, it's so incredibly like it's difficult to understand, I guess, when you live in London. Like, you know, even if you're in one of the like, you know, poorer parts, the more deprived parts of London, like just like you still have more in common with a northerner if you live in like a poor part of London, for sure, like you really do. But if you're like not in that specific kind of place, you're just not going to understand what it's like to be poor. It's like it's you know.
Can I tell you that I've had, in the last few days of my community, I've had to like convince people. This is how north people in my community can be. They were convinced there are no poor parts of the South. There are no poor parts of London. They're like, oh, okay, whatever.
Because I'm not from Manchester originally. I'm from a place called Scunthorpe, which if you've heard of Scunthorpe, I'm sorry.
Congratulations, you win a prize. You win a prize. People in Britain haven't even heard of Scunthorpe.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, no, it's like industrialized countryside, and I don't think people in London can actually understand. Can understand that level of poverty in like not that we have an ex-mining community, but a mining community offshoot in the north, steelworks, which has declined so much. Like, and then they're just you're surrounded by cows and this broken down steelwork. I don't think people in the south can fully understand that. In some areas of the south, I won't lie, they probably do. They throw out towns like that, but I don't think you have this weird kind of like dead endness to stuff that you can within the north. Like there's some people that I know still live in Scunthorpe. They don't actually have a way out of Scunthorpe. That's just where they will like live, whether they want to or not. You know,
dead endness is a powerful descriptor for an area. Oh my god, because that's like it's hard to like put your finger on. You're like, oh, this feels like this is it. There's nothing else.
Yeah, without significant investment from the government 20 years ago, Scunthorpe's not gonna survive. Sorry for anybody that's from Scunthorpe. I still love Scunthorpe very much. I don't hate Scunthorpe, but yeah, it's not had the investment that it should have done basically, and that's kind of screwed it. So
yeah, it's not the people who were born in Scunthorpe's fault. It's literally Westminster. But then that's what the North-South divide is. It's the fact that Westminster is its own fucking thing. And they just all they care about is London, and because that's where the money is, right? That's where all the big business rates come from. That's where all the fucking cronyism happens. I think like people, especially abroad, need to understand that a lot of British politics is literally like, you've got the Houses of Parliament there in Westminster, and literally down the road you've got the City of London, which is just like the financial district. It's all fucking. They're just meeting up. They're jumping on the tube and they're going for coffee afterwards, and they're shaking their hands under the tables and doing all these fucking dirty deals. It's literally just that, and that's why everyone in London has a much better time, no matter how they feel they're having a time.
Everybody's having a really tough time. Like it's not not to take away from the Southerners. It's just the Northerners exist too.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. And Westminster routinely forgets that the North exists.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the media as well, because the media is very South-centric here. So, yeah, we just don't things happen up in the North and they just won't be reported nationally. In the same way, floods, for example, if I wanted to pull something out of the air, and if anybody is from the Northeast, you might know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, floods is a big one that pisses a lot of people off in the North. Nobody cares if it floods around where I'm from, but floods down south, all the stops are pulled out. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, wild. That's just like one thing,
So yeah, we're coming up to the questions time, and we've only got one question.
Our chat is failing us.
I'm so sick of chat. They're trying to blame me, saying that I'm a really good interviewer. That's not
you're
true.
Very thorough, but also chat, put your little chatter minds together and come up with more than one question.
It's not hard.
It's not hard.
It's not hard. But yeah, no, please, if you have any questions, because I guess if you want some tips as to what kind of things you could ask Jade, things about, I don't know, maybe starting a campaign of your own. What's it like to start a campaign? Don't make me ask these questions, because I'll feel like I'm dominating the entire interview, which I have done already. Think about that. Think about your streamer, one of your hosts of Red Planet, please. Yes, boss. Yeah, that's right. I am the boss, and you need to do what I say. Okay, so in terms of, in fact, you know what? I'll make it easier on the chatters. I will ask one of those questions. So, it's just obviously like it was people just like in a room. and they were in a pub and they were like, we should just not pay our energy bills, right? But you got involved because you saw it on the TV,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think that's where I've seen it. So I'm very dissociative, so my timelines could get messed up very quickly. But yeah, so I think that's how it was.
100%. I get to you.
Because I think it had just been on actually the Right Stuff, which is the same as, I think that's who it was. Somebody had been talking about
It was on The Right Stuff.
yeah. Yeah, and then I just was like, I was in one of those moods that I sometimes get into, which I've also got into recently, where I'm like, well, this is pissing me off and I want to do something about this. And like, I can't just argue with people on the internet all day. Like, that's actually really stressful and not getting anywhere. So this is a thing, and you know, I'll just throw my capacity at it for now. Yeah, and I just went onto the website, filled in my name, my phone number, that's my postcode. I think that was literally, it was just like name, phone number, postcode. Then got an email with a link to a WhatsApp group. That was for M20. And that's actually some of my closest friends at the moment. I met in that WhatsApp group as well. So it was straight away, you just connected with people that, because it's a single issue thing, you're all agreeing with each other about it. You're all really annoyed. You're all really already at the point that you were willing to go onto this website and sign up to a strike. So everybody's already a bit radicalized. So it was just, yeah, it was very cool to get put into a chat with like Kat, Kate, everybody like that. It's just really, really good people that like care a lot, and then expand out from there of like this real.
Just so everyone has context, Kat and Kate are also members and one ex-member of the tenants union. Yeah.
I've told her she has to come back to Manchester at some point. So
no, Kat, Kat, if you're listening to this, we all miss you very much, Conrad. What are you doing? Why did you leave?
Why would you go there?
Why would you go to London?
We just spent a half an hour slagging it off. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I think, well, that's a huge thing, right? Because like, you know, I'm constantly telling people this. I'm constantly telling people that like, if you go out and organize, you will meet like there's friends and then there's comrades, right? There's friends and then there's comrades, because you know, people always complain when you see people complaining on the internet about like being a leftist. One of the most common complaints is, oh, I'm always having to worry about like what my friends' politics might be, and I might have to have a conversation with them. But like, if you meet someone in an org, you don't really need to have that conversation. Like, you're pretty much already, you know what I mean, like there with your political opinions. So and that's huge. Like, that could be like a massive thing. You'll get like friends for life with that kind of a connection, because you're all going towards something that is bigger than you individually, which is massive, and it's actually profound, I would say, in what we're trying to achieve.
It's the cornerstone, I think, of like leftist organizing, is being able to connect with everybody within your community. And that is the thing, like, I mean, that's the thing that people want to copy from Don't Pay a lot of the time, especially in the mainstream politics, is being able to connect everybody locally together, and have them be active and all of that stuff. But that again, it, you know, there were things like, we were intentional about building that as well, because the way that Don't Pay is was advertised to people as like community building. So you get a lot of community building people that are very interested in building community within that. So we're all very big on there has to be food at meetings, and like, you know, that kind of stuff that helped us to trust each other and build up that capacity. Because if we didn't like each other and we didn't get on, you probably wouldn't want to go to the meetings, right? So you have to.
Oh, I know all about that.
Yeah.
So less said about that the better.
Yes.
But yeah, so we are starting to have some questions coming in now, which I think is good.
Nice.
And I think we should utilize the question and answer time for some actual questions from our wonderful live chatters on YouTube. But I'm not going to ask any of them, because I've done loads of asking questions of Jade today. So Kira, Tim, decide between yourselves who's going to do the first one.
I will I will do the first one. I just want to say this is proof that bullying works. We bullied the chat.
Yeah.
And now look, we have.
It happened. We berated them.
Yeah. We went from 1 question to 4 questions. That's a 300% increase in questions because of bullying. Anyways,
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. This is from Great Crab 00. They say, I realize that you might not be able to answer this, but do you think that something like Don't Pay Manchester could happen in the US?
That's actually really interesting because well, the way I understand that debt laws work in the US is that it would be different from state to state. And I think, though, please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not American, you can go to prison in America for not paying debts. Is that right? That there's certain debts that you can go to prison for, like bills not paid if you built up enough debt. Is that right?
I'm not 100% sure, but I know the police are involved in so much of like,
Yeah, so
much.
the police can't get involved in a debt that you have in the UK. So that makes it very different straight away, I think. So yeah, so I think it would have to be, I think it, like, I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but it would be like how we've done it here, which means you'd have to look at your local system and it would have to be very localized for your area, right? It'd probably have to be very localized for your state. So it'd have to be like, I don't know, Don't Pay California or something like that. And it might even have to break down even more than that, like how we did, where it's a city by city, because each different city is going to have, because I mean, like part of it is like how Manchester Council wants, because at the end of the day, if it's going to go to court, it's going to go through Manchester Court, right? How are they going to respond to a lot of people not paying stuff? Are they going to want to clog up the court system and all this kind of thing? So there's a lot of different parts, and I don't understand enough about America to say that it would work or not. You'd have to look at your local system, and there would be something that would work, I think, within that, but it would be very specialized to where you live, I think.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, the next one we've got from Odnon says, we talk about this a lot. What's the best first steps in appealing to folks who may not be progressive but are also suffering under landlords, etc.?
Landlords. I mean, we do end up attracting more right-wing people than you'd think to these organizations. That's the first thing that I would say. Because then once you've got them through the door, it is just kind of like, I mean, we in the tenants union, we actually do training on how to talk to people about their right-wing beliefs and help them understand where that fear is coming from. And I also, I come, like, Scunthorpe is quite a right-wing place I grew up in, so like being a leftist in there, I've had to also talk a lot to right-wing people and try and get them to listen. And I think the main thing when you do, because I could give you like, there's no like one size fits all. Like, I think not reducing people down to their opinions is really important. Seeing them as a person and not these politicalized weird opinions that they picked up from the newspaper. They're a person with a concern, and what is that concern that they have? And then bringing it round to the left, because you're not doing, like, obviously, like, again, go back to UK politics, but I'll think of a very like famous example of Gordon Brown and why Labour did end up losing an election basically to the Tories is he called an old lady a bigot. Whether you think that old lady is a bigot is neither here or there, the actual way it was viewed.
And she was in Manchester, wasn't she? She was in Rochdale.
I think so. Oh yeah, that would make a lot of sense. She was in Rochdale. Yeah. And she, you know, he didn't, what he messed up on within that, just me giving my advice to Gordon Brown. Like, the first thing he messed up on was not turning his kissing microphone off when he got in the car and called her a bigot. That was the first problem. The second thing is even when he was engaging with her, he did not accept what she was saying. So, like, for example, in Scunthorpe, you would probably get a similar argument from people, right? Of immigration is hurting this part of the country and the XYZ, and that's why we need to leave the EU. And that's very much from my teenage years of that because we have done it now. But where I grew up is very pro-Brexit, pro-EU leaving area. And it isn't, if you went into that area and you called them a racist for that, that would straight away invalidate any argument. They were not going to listen to you anymore. Why would they? That you don't understand their concern, because in their head they're not being racist. They're not looking at the color of somebody's skin and saying I don't want you here. because the people that I particularly in Scunthorpe as well, it's the Polish that everybody's mad about. You know, it's so they don't see it as a race issue. But it's like talking to them at their level where it's like, okay, you see the problem as being Polish immigrants coming into this community and taking your jobs away. You're not seeing actually, like what I said before, which is the government haven't invested in Scunthorpe. I mean, I said 20 years, it's longer than that. But like, you know, for years and years and years, they've let us steadily, slowly decline with the steel industry. And actually talking to them about their level about it and getting them to see, like, actually, it's not this Polish guy over here that's working a minimum wage job that you don't want to do anyway. It's the fact that there's been no investment in this area for 20 years has led to you thinking the only decent jobs are in the factories or here or that, when actually this area could be a lot more than what it is, and you're not seeing how much more it could be because you've been pitted against someone else. Yeah, that's what it's talking to them at their level and not just calling people, you know.
Well, it's material
names or-
analysis.
Yeah.
It's material analysis. It's like, why? Okay, so this person has an ideological failing. Why have they reached this ideological failing? Well, it's because of their material conditions. They don't have the time. They're not educated, and that's a failure of the state, right? They don't have these things. Yeah. Great answer.
It's not their failure. They're coming to you with something, yeah, totally bigoted, but you have to take people where they're at currently. You can't just mold everybody into what you want them to be as soon as you're talking to them. Everybody's going to come.
What you're saying is the result of actually doing things in the world and not the result of saying in your bubble online and disposing of people, which tends to be a big tendency on the online left to see people as not people, but as takes, you know, or opinions and or cancelable things that they can, is this you know, point to a thing and then dispose of those people or treat them as if they're not human beings with feelings and like fears and all sorts of, you know, just the whole spectrum of being a human.
Yes.
So just I want to let everyone know this is the answer that was very great. It was a wonderful answer. Is the result of being a person that actually does shit and actually cares about accomplishing the goal you're trying to accomplish, as opposed to just posturing and safely remaining inside your bubble without ever actually giving a fuck in real life.
Yeah, real life is not about dunking on people. These are the people you want to organize with. I want them to be on my side. I'm not going to use this opportunity to dunk on them. I mean, everybody loses that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm perfect. Everybody loses their rag sometimes when they're organizing. There's definitely, you know, I've had my, God, that's a bigot moments. But we should be wanting to try and bring people over to what we're doing, because otherwise if I'm just talking to people that already agree with me, what is the point? Like, what is actually the point? I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm just I was just say, yeah, we're just circle jerking at the end of the day. It's not getting anywhere.
Yeah, if everyone already agrees with you, then it's like you should be doing the thing instead of talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A circle jerk is only good when everybody is aware that it's a circle jerk and everyone's agreed to it and it's consensual. Yeah, absolutely.
As they say.
This is what they say.
Never heard this before. Okay, really though, I think a circle jerk probably be pleasurable for the participants, even if they weren't aware that it's a circle that's jerking. Because they're getting jerked.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as long as there's some jerking involved, you know.
As long as there's a jerk.
They're getting the serotonin, they're getting the endorphin. Like, yeah, all right.
I'm just saying. Okay, this next question. This is from B-Rat. B-Rat asks, any advice on how to start an org like that in a country that doesn't even have housing org / renters unions yet?
Oh wow. If your country doesn't have those things, you should set those things up. That would be my answer. You know,
come on, B-Rat. What are you fucking waiting for, dude?
Sorry.
Like, get it started.
It's all on you now, B-Rat.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, I think you would just start with, like, if you know you're a person in the world, there are people that you know, right, and that have the same. Well, actually, when I was asked for a homework question, this kind of feeds into that. I would say you need to join a local community centre so that you're meeting people in the real world that do need things, they will be at the community centres within your country, or whatever the equivalent of that is in your country. Where do people go to get the social help that they need? Whether that's like just interacting with people or whatever. One of the biggest things I was doing in Don't Pay that I found the most impactful was when we started working with the community centres. That's when I met a lot more of the leftist organisations within Manchester, and it wasn't just Don't Pay, it was like Tenants Union or Gaswell Garden Project and all these different things across Manchester. They were all coming together at the community centre. So that's probably where I say is like, well, again, this is like my line of work is adult social care. So I'd look at what's the adult social care like in the country, and where do like those kind of, I want to put this in the right way, so just give me a sec. Those people that are being like forgotten by your adult social care system, where do they go to get support, and go and meet them where they're at, and then what do they need? Because like you say, you haven't got these renters units, maybe you don't need them, maybe rent is fine in the country, I don't know. But you will find out what the issues are by going to community centres or whatever the equivalent is.
Cool. So
Who's next?
our next
it's
one
Tim.
we've got
Big Tim.
Big Tim. Middle Earth Marxist has asked, how would you integrate climate change related critiques of energy companies into any planned action against them?
The problem, well, I think the problem with the question is, that all, like, well, in my belief, all of the ills of the world have one root cause, really, which is oil and gas and energy companies and like this sucking of resources from the planet. So it all interconnects anyway. I am not the biggest believer in muddying a message because of how effective Don't Pay was. If we'd have started talking, well, when we did talk about climate change within that, we had a lot of right-wing people that were signing on with us. They didn't like that talk, and you're just switching people off straight away when there's no why are we muddying the water with another thing we've already got them on board for the thing we want them to be on board with. So I'd have that aspect of it. Like, it is really, if you've got like a single issue campaign, it's really good to keep it on that single issue. And then I think about us in terms of Don't Pay, there's actually kind of almost, particularly in Manchester, there's no point in us taking that argument because there's already two groups I can think of off the top of my head in Manchester doing that already. Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion are doing that. So if that's what I'm interested in, I will go and help them out. Do you see what I mean? So like, I don't think it's always good to have everything mush and muddy because you'll be losing people through doing that. But if you stick on one issue, you can make it really clear. It doesn't work for everything. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't work for the tenants union, for example. Like, we can't just focus on mold. There's other problems, right? But yeah, I think when you're doing like a single issue campaign, you don't want to muddy it with loads of extra information. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I think that is the last question that we have got. It is. Yeah. So normally at the end of every stream, we ask our guests to come up with an idea for homework, something that the watchers and listeners can do, like just in their day-to-day lives, that you think will kind of like, I guess, aligns with your message, but it's something that will be good for them to go out and do. Have you got any ideas of something that people would be able to do?
I do. And it is that community centre thing. Again, I think whatever the community centre looks like, wherever you are, the nearest one to you, I guarantee you 100% they need volunteers. I can tell you that without even looking at what it is. They need volunteers. If you show up there, they will bite your hand off. If you're like, hey, I'm an evil in your body, what do you want me to do? I can guarantee there'll be people there ready to take you on and make you do whatever you agree to. So I think I would say that, because it's like that's a good inroad into doing stuff in real life in terms of like activism and things like that. It's also just a really nice time. Like when I go to the community centres, I've just sat playing dominoes, with some like old guy or whatever. It's just a nice couple of hours that you can spend that's like, not in service of anything else but your community, which is really, I think.
Would would you say it's nice to be nice?
Yes. It's really selfishly nice to be nice as well, which because it does a lot for you going to the community center, like making friends with people. Like, yeah, that's how the closest friends I've made over the last 2 years is through doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a definite selfish element to doing it, but it has the good knock-on effect of serving the community for what it needs.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right. That's good.
Have you have you got any plugs, anything you want us to shout out for us? I know that Don't Pay is not really doing a mad amount of stuff right now, but it was still valuable to come and talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think so. There's Fuel Pot V Action, like I say, I think that's a good campaign. I like that. Don't pay water bills. Please go and look at that. I think that's really cool, especially if you're in the UK. I think that's really doable. I don't know anything else. Yeah, that'd probably be it, I think.
Yeah, cool.
Tenants Union, if you're in Manchester, I guess.
Yeah.
No one here knows anything about that. I don't talk about it every week.
Yeah, we've never heard about this whatsoever. This is all new to us. No, that's awesome. All right, cool. Well, yeah, thanks for coming along, and thanks for giving us a little glimpse into what you're doing. And yeah, awesome. Hopefully our listeners have taken in a lot from that. I think I think you and Mule together were a great interview pair. So yeah, a lot to take away from that. So thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, everyone. It's nice to come on.
See you later.
We'll see you later.
Bye. So that was absolutely mint, wasn't it? And it was great.
It was great.
It's good.
You know, I say that's a ruffian. It's nice to be nice because he's such a mean guy. My little bunny, one of my bunnies, Ruffian. He's like the crankiest little guy. So when he tries to lunge,
cranky little old guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a cranky little old, like 3-year-old guy.
That's very old for a bunny.
No, it's not.
Oh, isn't it?
No, he's just like he's like, because rabbits can, like, Samba's like, I don't know, she's very, very, very old, but she's like, she's way too old, but she's like 14 years old.
Wow.
What?
Breaking
That's
records is ridiculous.
Old,
yeah. It's a little ruffian. He like lunges and grunts. You try to pet him, even like to do the nicest, just if you want to just sit next to him, he goes, and he grunts and lunges. I'm like, Ruffian, be nice. It's nice to be nice. It's nice to be nice.
He would experience the niceness of being nice if he was in turn nice.
And I'm so nice to him. He's such a cranky guy. But the shelter did say that. They said he was cranky and hates people, but he might warm up in the right home. And how he likes pets and stuff, but he's still very cranky in other ways.
No.
Anyways, sorry to make it all about bunnies all of a sudden. It's just when you said it's nice to be nice, I just immediately thought of a little cranky guy.
It's nice to think of bunnies.
Conrad can cut all this
No,
out.
don't cut it out. No, it's good.
It's not
Leave
topical.
it in.
It's not topical.
It is, because bunnies are nice.
You know, it's Easter according to some denominations. So, and somehow for some reason, Easter means the rabbits.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
That lay eggs.
Just like Jesus in the
Just like Jesus
story.
did. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely nothing to do with the pre-existing pagan ceremonies that coincide with this. Nothing to do with that at all.
Well, I keep checking under my bunnies, and there's no eggs so far. So I think they're not Christian bunnies. That's what I'm learning.
You're not feeding them enough chocolate. That's what it is. You need to feed them chocolate.
I haven't fed them any chocolate, actually.
That's why they're not laying eggs.
Anyways. Jade was a fantastic guest, so
yeah. We should add a disclaimer that it's probably a terrible idea to feed a bunny rabbit.
Don't feed a bunny.
Don't
feed
anything
a
like
oh yeah, that
dogs,
was sarcasm. Please don't. Please don't do that. Don't feed rabbits
definitely
chocolate.
Don't do that. That's not your.
It was a big joke.
Yeah. Well, so if you've enjoyed the stream, you've had fun, you really enjoyed our guest, the way to support us, like we mentioned earlier, the best way is through Patreon. So you can go to www.patreon.com/red_planet. And we've got a bunch of different tiers there for, just like whatever you can afford. The first one is Sprite mode, which comes in at about $3.50 a month in New Zealand dollars, about $2 American, and like £2 around there.
Yeah, £2 for 2
Yeah.
quid.
£2.
She's becoming British, so I don't even need to do this
Yeah.
bit anymore. Kira's just basically British now.
Please
She's
don't say
spoken to
that.
she's spoken to a British
Please.
guy.
Yeah.
So now she's
Please.
British.
She caught it.
You don't understand how much of a
Um,
thing this is for me, that everything in my life is just somehow coming up British. I don't know why.
Yeah. That's been a huge problem for lots of places all around the world, to be honest. But anyway, Sprite mode, $2 US. Get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. The benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you are helping the Red Planet team, early access to the VODs, access to the Red Planet Discord, and yes, so that's just, we've got a Discord that gets you in the door, that you can come in, chat, there's all different channels, all that kind of stuff. But if you were to upgrade to the next tier, if Kira would like to tell us a little bit about the next tier, then you can learn a little bit more about the Discord.
Sure. So the next tier is Goblin mode. For $10 a month, or £8.50, or $13.50.
It is, what was it? It was $17.50 a month.
I'm sorry, that's
Yeah.
way off. Okay, I'm more British than anything, I guess. All right. Everyone loves a goblin. We all get a little goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from Sprite mode, and a pack of cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only places like that, and access to exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts, which we haven't done in a while. So we need to do one of those,
we need
like,
to catch up on that.
ASAP. Yeah. So Sprite mode gets you into the Discord, and then Goblin mode gets you into our Discord hangouts, which are like, we watch movies or shows together, and then the hosts do commentary, and then the chatters can chat, and it's nice and cozy and fun. But Mule,
Yes.
you're kind of feral, right?
Oh, it's been said.
Oh no. Well, would you like to tell me about the next tier?
I am a chimp, so yes. Beast mode, that's right. It's £17 a month, or $20, or how much in New Zealand dollars, Tim?
So in New Zealand dollars, it is $34.50.
$34.50 if you're in New Zealand. Holy shit, are you actually going to go beast mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yeah, pin badges like the one I'm holding up on the visual stream right now, if you're not watching this on the podcast. Yes, pin badges. You can wear your excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It's completely cool and good to do. But Tim, some people in our audience have a problem.
It has been said.
Their problem is they're here all the time. They're constantly like, when they found out that you might not be making it to the stream today, they were devastated. Like, it was the worst day of their entire lives. They needed like a whole week of support if that was going to be the case. They just weren't ready for it. What can we do for those like clearly unwell individuals?
Well, for those people that surely need all the help from us that they can get, for the real sickos, they can engage in sicko mode, which is $172 a month in New Zealand dollars, $100 a month in American dollars, and I'm guessing around there in pounds, maybe a little bit
It's
less.
85.
Yeah, 85. Yeah. Cool.
Kira.
And so if you support us this much, we can only really reasonably offer you all of the stuff from the lower tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of every stream, which looks like this. Thank you to our sickos, JBP, Queen Pib, Cassitastrophe, and Risk Inverse. Thanks for those sickos. They help a huge amount to to keep us doing the things that we do. But if you've watched this whole stream, you thought that was great, but you just can't get enough sweet DJ Mule content. Mule, where can Where can these sickos and aspiring sickos find out more?
Yeah, I would definitely say anyone who watches my content is a sicko because I'm pretty unwell, not gonna lie.
That'd have to be, yeah.
I need help. This is a cry for help. Anyway, there is my link tree. It's linktree.ee/DJ Mule, DJ MUEL. I'm trying so hard not to laugh because Kira is just inconsolable on the panel next to me. But linktree.ee/DJ Mule. I'm doing a lot of stuff at the minute. I did a Legend of the Zoombeanies stream yesterday. Not Legend of the Zoombeanies, Logical Journey of the Zoombeanies.
I love Zoombeanies.
What is this word?
I played it when I was a kid. I love Zoombeanies.
So you must have had one of these games, Tim, because we all had like similar ones. It's like an educational game.
It's like a logic game with little like heads that bounce around with little feet and arms attached to them, and they have like different features. Some have mustache, some don't have a mustache.
I've never seen these before ever. Wow.
And you have to do all these like logic things that help them down their journey, like figure out.
I would have loved this.
Oh my god,
I would have loved this.
And these make the little noises. I love Zoombeanies.
That's what I thought. As soon as people were talking, because I was saying like, okay, we're gonna have an incentive to hit the dono goal in the stream this month. I'll play some educational games because that's always fun. I played Sonic Schoolhouse once, and that was really funny and weird. But someone was like, Logical Journey of the Zoombeanies, and I looked at it and I said exactly those words. I was like, I would have loved this. So I gave it a go yesterday. So if you want to check out that VOD, that is going to be available on my Patreon page only, because those kinds of streams are only available to my patrons who subscribe to me at £5 a month or above. So if you want to go check out my Logical Journey with the Zoombeanies, where I definitely don't kill loads of Zoombeanies, check that out on my Patreon.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I enjoyed it quite a lot, actually. It was very cute. It was like being like 7 again and playing these kinds of games. I do enjoy checking out, these old school games and whatnot. Had a bit of technical difficulties, but other than that,
yeah, because it's like an ancient game.
Fucking 95-year-old game.
Yeah, I did a stream. This is a long time ago where I went back and did you guys ever have Microsoft Encarta?
Mm-hmm.
Like that encyclopedia thing Microsoft made, and it had a game in it called Mind Maze. And it was like this little labyrinth that you had to get through, and it would be like just general questions and stuff. I played that through on stream, and it was still so good. But
hell yeah.
The wild thing is I still remembered so many answers to the questions like just from playing it. So I finished it in like one go on stream. It was wild. It was really good though. I feel like someone should remake that kind of thing, but with a much larger pool of questions, I think. 2
games I remember from that era, and I know we're gonna go overtime with this bit, but whatever. One of them is this like movie maker game. I forgot the name of it.
Oh, was it
so derpy?
Was it the 3D one? Like 3D movie maker? Yeah. I had that. Yeah.
It was so fun. Like it was being a kid and being like, you can like program basically. I don't know how we did it, but like get a person to walk over here, and then you can say something and make them say it or whatever. It was so fun. So there's that one, and then the other one was Are You Afraid of the Dark?
There was a game for that?
Yeah, it was a point and click, and it was scary as hell.
I think I remember that actually. Yeah, I think I do remember that, and it was one of those things that it was like everyone would play it and pretend they weren't scared.
I was absolutely scared. I'm totally fine with admitting it. Yeah. Like this part where like a mummy chases you, you have to like point and click away from it and fast enough. Oh, there's playthroughs of it if you ever want to like Google it and just like watch someone else play it. But like, because sometimes it's hard to get a hold of these things. But
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, so if the people watching and listening want to see some more Kira potentially playing things like that, where can they do that?
Well, they could probably do that in their imagination land, in their head, in their mind palace.
Just imagining you getting really scared.
But I don't know. I'm still trying to process. I don't know. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing with regards to streaming this. But if you want to keep up with me and figure out like the best way, let me put it this way, the best way to keep up with me, because I've kind of like stopped. I've logged off of Twitter. I've logged off of Blue Sky. I'm definitely logged off of Twitch. And me being on YouTube once a week is like the extent of my YouTube involvement these days. Although I have been toying with the idea of just maybe doing like a stream a week or something. But if you want to keep up with me, actually join my Discord because I'm there. And I, for a while, wasn't participating there because it was too hard for me. But now I'm back, and so I'm chatting with my chatters. And if you want to be one of those chatters who gets to give me a little digital coffee as an emoji first thing, because the first chatter who does that gets the thank you, and then you get thank you rep. Hello. Anyways, if you want to do that, join my Discord. It's discord.gg/KiraChats. You can also find that link in my link tree, linktra.ee/KiraChats. It's very accessible. So yeah. But where can I think Tim is the only person we haven't been able to locate.
It's Tim.
Well, if we want to triangulate you.
Almost didn't even locate me on the stream today.
You're so elusive.
Yeah, I was in a different time zone. I'm in the future, it's
wow.
Yeah. Wow. No, you can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread. But I haven't been streaming much aside from this stream for a while, just because my regular job and all that kind of stuff is very very busy. Otherwise you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. And if you want to, I've plugged this a couple times lately, but it's getting close to being done. If you are into like tabletop RPGs and stuff, you can follow the one that I've been developing for a while on Twitter Twitter at DarkRPG2000, and and that's getting really, really close, so you can check that out there. And yeah, that's it. That's it.
Can I provide an extremely not standard, unconventional shout out as well? I want to shout out my friend Nicotine. Twitch.tv/Nicotine, NIKATINE. She has been so unbelievably supportive and kind to me throughout this whole process of me being banned, Twitch banning me, and responding positively to the Zionist harassment campaigns that are committed against me. She has been so immense. I can't just take my word for it. Behind the scenes, she's been so immensely supportive, and I would love to see if my chatters are looking for a stream to hang out in. Obviously hang out with my co-host here, but also I would encourage you to hang out with Nicotine on her stream, and you can let her know that I sent you or whatever, because I just really want her to be supported. Good people just deserve support, and she's absolutely one of those people. So please support my friend Nicotine.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, check out Nicotine, and thanks for coming along. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks to all our Patreon subscribers. So we will see you again this time next week.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.